My family favored boys over girls, so I never had enough to eat. When I was 12, starving, I found $1 on the road and bought 2 packs of instant noodles. From that day on, my once healthy body became frail and sickly, and a string of bad luck followed me. After being reborn, I let the village chief's son have the chance to find that money instead. From then on, the whole village was thrown into utter chaos. When I opened my eyes again, I was met with the sight of a tiled roof leaking with a steady drip, and cobwebs hanging in the corner. A familiar, cramping burn radiated from my stomach. I was starving. Wait, that's not right. I thought I was dead. So why do I feel hungry? I bolted upright, rushed barefoot out of the room into the main hall, and stared at the calendar hanging on the wall. May 16th, 1997. My heart was pounding out of control. As if it might leap right out of my throat at any second, I was reborn. Back to being 12 years old, back to the very day I found that $1 bill. After my death in a past life, my soul remained trapped in the village. I witnessed many things I never knew while alive, and finally understood why I had gone from strong as an ox to utterly frail and plagued by constant misfortune overnight. You useless waste of space, you're awake, so why aren't you fetching water? All you ever think about is lazing around. You lazy, good-for-nothing wretch. Having you was the worst luck for 8 lifetimes. A shrill voice rang in my ears. It was Mother, who always spoke to me with undisguised contempt. What are you standing there for, looking for a beating? Spare the rod and spoil the child. If you make us miss our water, I'll skin you alive. As she spoke, she emerged from the kitchen, brandishing a fire poker. Her round face was etched with meanness, and her beady, triangular eyes held a permanent look of doting affection for her son and utter contempt for me. I immediately turned and bolted out the door. Mom, I haven't had breakfast yet. I'm starving. I can't carry this. My name is Mara, and I was born in a small mountain village that favored sons over daughters. Here, girls were considered a financial burden, while boys were the precious heirs who carried on the family line. There was only one exception in the entire village. The family of the village chief. The chief and his wife treated their frail and sickly daughter, Yvonne, as their greatest treasure, coddling her as if she might break if handled roughly or melt if held too close. I've been strong and sturdy since I was a kid, with far more strength than others my age. Even at just 12 years old, I could carry a full load of water from the village's east end well all the way home without getting winded. Once my parents realized how much stronger I was than my peers, the chore of fetching water shifted from my father's broad shoulders to my own slender ones. Every day, I had to fill our large water vat to the brim. It was so big it took 12 full trips to fill it up. Even though I was the least favored at home, my mother would, in her great mercy, allow me to eat one sweet potato each morning, just so I'd have the strength to fill that water vat. My mother glared at me, her eyes blazing. How dare you talk back, you wretched girl? You've got some nerve. If you don't fill that water vat today, you won't get a single bite to eat. In my past life, I never understood why my mother denied me dinner the night before and then sent me out to fetch water on an empty stomach. It wasn't until I became a ghost that I realized it was all part of a calculated plan. Too, I stuck my tongue out at my mom. Let whoever wants to pick it, pick it. With that, I turned and bolted up the mountain. In my past life, even after I became sickly and plagued by constant bad luck, I managed to scrape by for half a year, living hand-to-mouth off Lion Mountain. I'm perfectly healthy, with no illness or misfortune. What's there to fear about going hungry? In my past life, last night, my parents deliberately didn't give me any food. Their excuse was that I must have been full from playing outside all day, and they had already finished all the food, watching my younger brother, who came home later than me, devour 3 full bowls of rice with glistening braised pork. I silently set down the basket of pigweed on my back. I was forced to fetch water right after getting up in the morning. After carrying 2 loads, I was so hungry I felt dizzy and my vision blurred. On my 3rd trip, a crumpled 1 yuan note, tied with a red string, lay quietly in the middle of the road, marked with strange symbols. Starving and seeing spots. I cast aside the finder's keeper's principle my teacher had taught me. I looked around, and seeing no one, immediately snatched up the money, ran to the village shop, bought 2 packs of instant noodles, and wolfed them down. Little did I know, from that day on, everything changed. I, who had always been as strong as an ox, started getting sick and having bad luck for no reason. I'd trip while walking, choke on water, catch a cold from the slightest breeze, and run a fever as soon as the weather turned hot. One day at school, while I was walking along just fine, I suddenly lost my balance and fell, ending up with a bloody head. My mother stormed into the school, made a huge, unreasonable scene, and managed to squeeze $500 in compensation out of them. With the money in hand, she immediately pulled me out of school and took me back home. That useless, sickly jinx who's always ill and can trip and crack their head open just walking down the street. They'll probably drop dead on the road one of these days. What's the point wasting money on school? They'd be better off coming home to help with the chores. As for the money the school gave for medical treatment and nutrition, it was instantly turned into a new backpack, new toys, a new game console, new clothes, and so on for my younger brother. Ever since I became a sickly weakling with a constant streak of bad luck, my family treated me even worse. My parents acted as if I were invisible, often not giving me any food. I had no choice but to drag my frail body up the mountain to scavenge for something to eat. Once they realized I could no longer work or contribute to the household, they sought a legal and permanent way to be rid of me. On my 13th birthday, my parents took my younger brother to visit relatives in the city, leaving me home alone. Before they left, my mother made a point of locking all the food away in her own room. They walked away without a backward glance, never once considering what might happen to me alone in the house. With no other choice, I dragged my frail body up the mountain to search for food, only to fall to my death. After I died, my spirit did not vanish. Instead, it lingered in the village. 3. I watched as my parents, after my death, accepted a hefty sum of hush money from the village chief. They used that money to buy new clothes for the whole family and added a bicycle to the household. Strangely enough, ever since I became sickly and plagued by bad luck, Yvonne, who was always frail, started getting better day by day. She went from being bedridden to catching a minor illness every few days and a major one every week, then to falling sick only once every couple of weeks, and finally, from being so weak she'd gasp for breath after a few steps to being able to run and jump. Yvonne has been unlucky since she was a child. Even lying in bed, chunks of plaster from the ceiling would fall for no reason, landing right on her face. The villagers whispered among themselves, with luck that bad, even if Yvonne can run and jump now, she's still the type to get hit by a car the moment she steps outside. Ever since her health improved, Yvonne's luck took a turn for the better. She'd find pheasant eggs while foraging for wild greens, and pheasants and hares would practically run right into her traps. She even started finding money on the road all the time. It took me 3 years of staying by their side to piece together the truth of the matter. Yvonne is a thief. She stole her health and good fortune right from me. Yvonne had been frail since childhood. The village chief, from who knows where, found a master to alter her fate against the heavens. The master asked the village chief for a 1 yuan coin and cast a spell called misfortune transference on it. Whoever picked up and used that coin would have their health and good fortune silently transferred to Yvonne. In turn, Yvonne's frail constitution and bad luck would be silently transferred to that person. After some deliberation, the village chief and his wife settled on me, the strongest and healthiest person in the whole village. The village chief came to our house in the middle of the night, pounding his chest as he made a promise to my parents. If this goes through, I'll get your son Tate into the town's central primary school, and I'll give you 1,000 yuan as a thank you. His words hit my parents right where it hurt. Without a second thought, my son-favoring parents agreed, and that's how my tragic fate was sealed. I don't understand how, as parents, some can cherish their daughters as their own lives, while others cast them aside like worn-out shoes. The day I pieced together the truth, I crouched on the ground, drawing circles to curse my parents and the village chief's family. As soon as I finished the last circle, everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the very day my fate took a turn, for, after wolfing down an entire roasted hare, I picked up my worn-out basket and headed down the mountain. I went straight to a spot not far from the place that had been the turning point in my fate in a previous life. Just as I expected, there it was again. It still lay quietly in the middle of the road, still bound with a red cord, still marked with strange symbols. It was like Pandora's box, waiting for some poor soul to unleash its most vicious curse. I ducked behind a tree to watch. Before long, the village chief's wife peeked up from another path. Seeing the money still there, she stamped her foot in frustration before slinking away. My heart raced, not from greed, nor from fear, but from a surge of excitement and hatred. As I watched Preston leading a pack of brats in a war game, inching closer to me, a wicked idea took root in my mind. I stepped out from behind the tree and swaggered right past Preston. "Hey, you good for nothing, stop right there, hand over what you're holding." Preston called me to a halt. For a kid his age, he had his village chief father's bossy, imperious toned-down pat. I handed him the shabby basket, filled with the wild greens I'd dug up from the mountain. Smack. Paw. "Who wants your lousy weeds?" Preston looked at me smugly, waiting for me to crawl on the ground like a dog and pick the greens back into the broken basket. After all, this had happened countless times before. To my surprise, I didn't pick up the broken basket. Instead, my eyes lit up as I stared ahead. Money. Preston was even quicker than me. He pounced on the money like a tiger. I panicked. "That's mine. I saw it first. Give it back." Preston looked smug as he spat right in my face. "What's yours? Call it, and see if it answers. A worthless brat like you still wants money." Pa, rubbing my hand where Preston had scraped the skin off, I watched him gather his friends and head to the corner store with that $1 bill. I couldn't let it go. I trailed behind Preston from a distance and saw him use that same dollar to buy 2 packs of instant noodles. He kept only 1 packet for himself, generously sharing the other with all his little friends. They crunched on the instant noodles with loud, crackling bites. Preston walked towards me as he ate, and the crunching sound was especially loud as he passed by my side. So delicious, you worthless loser, as if someone like you deserves to eat anything good. I didn't make a sound, just stared at them with red-rimmed eyes. Preston gloated, these instant noodles are so good, you loser, want some, get on your knees and beg me for it. His little buddies joined in, jeering and demanding I get down on my knees and bark like a dog. I still didn't make a sound. I watched Preston finish the whole bag of noodles, and I cried. They were tears of joy. I've finally changed my own destiny. The village chief and his wife are famously doting on their daughter, but I wonder who they'd favor more if they had a son. Seeing me sobbing uncontrollably, Preston and his friends burst out laughing, spat in my direction, and ran off to continue their war games. Once they were gone, I immediately turned and headed to the corner shop. I pulled out a crumpled 1 yuan note to buy 2 packs of instant noodles. That single yuan was all I had managed to save up over the past few years. I crushed the instant noodles through the bag, then opened it, poured in the seasoning powder, shook it all up, and began to savor it slowly. In my past life, I was so hungry that I wolfed down 2 packs of instant noodles without even tasting them. Now, with my stomach not growling, I took my time and discovered that there was actually something as delicious as instant noodles in this world. After finishing the noodles, I picked up my worn-out basket and ambled home. When I got home, to my surprise, my parents didn't scold or hit me for once. On any other day, my dad's shoulder pull and my mom's fire poker would have already teamed up for a good old-fashioned beating. My dad's gaze lingered on the corner of my mouth, a flicker of excitement flashing in his eyes. My mother stared intently at the corner of my mouth. When she confirmed it was just crumbs from instant noodles, she broke into a smile, her sharp, triangular eyes softening. I couldn't help but marvel at the power of money. In the dead of night, my parents sneaked off to the village chief's house to claim their credit. I quietly followed them. I watched as my parents greedily tipped the 1,000 yuan from the village chief's hand. I watched as the village chief patted my father on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, old friend, your Tate will be able to transfer to the central primary school in September." Clearly, someone had already told the village chief that I had taken a 1 yuan coin to the village shop during the day to buy snacks, although the person also told him that Preston had taken a 1 yuan coin to buy something at the shop too. The village chief didn't suspect a thing. The couple gave their son pocket money every day, starting with at least 1 yuan, and sometimes as much as 2 or 5. My father was grinning from ear to ear. "Thank you, village chief, thank you." The children from the village had to hike over a hill to attend the primary school in the neighboring village. Preston was the only child from the whole village who attended the town's central primary school, because the school's principal was the village chief's brother-in-law. Trading a worthless girl for my son's bright future and $1,000, there's no better deal than that, I bet. At this moment, my father deeply regrets not having more worthless daughters to sell off. I watched it all unfold with cold, detached eyes. Here were 2 couples, one willing to sacrifice their own daughter without a second thought for money and their son's prospects, the other ready to ruin another family's child for the sake of their own daughter. The next day, I got up and headed straight for the mountains again. After eating a roasted pheasant up in the hills, I came back down with a basket of wild greens. Just as I reached the foot of the mountain, I heard some exciting news. The village chief's son, Preston, snuck off to play in the water and fell into the river. He was barely alive when we pulled him out. It took forever of chest compressions before he finally coughed up the water. He's been taken to the hospital now. It worked so quickly. My hands were trembling slightly with excitement. When I got home, my parents still didn't scold or hit me. My mother's eyes swept over me, back and forth. After setting down the broken basket, I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. "I'm exhausted. Mom, is there anything to eat? I'm starving." A flicker of excitement mixed with disdain passed through my mother's eyes. "All you ever think about is eating. You want a reward for the slightest bit of work. Why don't you just go die out there somewhere?" My parents walked past me, went back to their room, and immediately shut the door. 6. My mother's voice trembled with excitement. "That useless girl used to run up the mountain like it was nothing, and now she's completely exhausted after just one trip. It looks like our plan has really worked, but I'm a bit worried. What if she ends up like that sickly Yvonne, just lying in bed waiting for us to take care of her?" my father said. "Let's keep an eye on her for now. If she really can't work anymore, we'll sell her off to that old bachelor as soon as possible. We can use the bride price for Tate." I clenched my fists. "Since you've shown no mercy, don't blame me for what comes next." Tate rushed in from outside, his face glistening with sweat. "Hey, you good for nothing. I'm starving. Go make me something to eat." No, without a word, I picked up the tattered basket and walked into the kitchen. My mother's booming voice carried from the other room, "Make some wild herb porridge, and use eggs to fry 5 wild herb pancakes." I did exactly as I was told. "Dad, these 2 are for you. You're the breadwinner of the family. You need to eat well." "Tate, these 2 are for you. You're the future of this family. Eat up so you can grow strong and carry on the family line." At the dinner table, My mother portioned out the wild vegetable and egg pancakes. My father got 2, Tate got 2. And there was one left for her. As for me, the one who'd worked all day, I only got the watery wild vegetable gruel. What are you staring at? Keep looking and I'll gouge your eyes out. A worthless girl like you dares to even think about the wild herb and egg pancake. I kept my head down, listlessly sipping the thin wild herb gruel. When I looked up, Tate was making a smug face at me. He took a huge, exaggerated bite of the fragrant wild herb and egg pancake in his hand, then smacked his lips loudly on purpose. This egg pancake is so delicious. What a shame a worthless girl isn't fit to eat something this good. Only a boy like me, who carries the important duty of continuing the family line, deserves to eat it. 2 weeks later, Preston, the village chief's son, came back home. The village chief's wife was crying her eyes out. It turned out that after being in the water for too long, Preston caught a chill on the way to the hospital. By the time he arrived, it had developed into severe pneumonia, requiring immediate hospitalization. Even during his hospital stay, Preston couldn't stay put. He sneaked out to an internet cafe in the middle of the night when the adults weren't looking. He later spiked a fever of 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and nearly fried his brains. What should have been a 1-week discharge was dragged out into a full 2 weeks. Upon discharge, the doctor stressed the need for a proper period of convalescence, warning that her physical functions would decline and her overall constitution would weaken otherwise. Yvonne's health had improved considerably. She had progressed from being bedridden to being able to take a few steps. Because of the situation with Preston, the village chief and his wife did not seem overly pleased with Yvonne's improvement. 7. My mother gloated at home. Serves her right. Just because she has a bit of money, she's been putting on airs, dressing in gaudy colors and painting her face like a fox spirit all day long. My father puffed on his long-stemmed pipe. Keep your voice down. Don't let anyone hear you. My mother harbored a mix of envy and jealousy towards the village chief's wife, and often gossiped about her at home. Don't let my father's honest and simple appearance fool you. Deep down, he was also jealous of the village chief for marrying such a well-connected wife. In his mind, if he had married the village chief's wife, he'd be the chief himself by now. My mother shot me a fierce glare. If you dare gossip outside, I'll knock your teeth out. My little brother stuck his tongue out at me. Naya, we'll sell you off for my bride price after knocking your teeth out. In my past life, the art of framing others was incredibly potent. I found that 1 yuan coin, bought some instant noodles with it, and within a week, I became a sickly wreck. The whole thing was so bizarre that my reputation as a sickly weakling spread far and wide, which is why my parents couldn't manage to sell me off. Since I was worthless to them, they beat and cursed me constantly. To get rid of this burden, the 3 of them went to visit relatives in the city, leaving me all alone at home to starve to death. Tate never saw me as his sister. In his eyes, I was just a servant girl and a worthless burden he could sell off for a bride price. Ever since I became a sickly burden, unable to fetch a bride price for him, he stopped treating me like a human being. He said he wanted to see a drowned rat, and shoved me out into the pouring rain without a second thought. He said he wanted fish, and with a single motion, pushed me into the raging river. He said he wanted to set off firecrackers. He called his friends, tied me to a tree trunk, piled a heap of wet cow dung around my feet, and then set off the firecrackers one by one in the dung. There were countless other things of that nature. I didn't say a word, and as usual, I went out with my worn-out basket. I went to check the trap. My luck was in. I'd caught another hare. I pulled a section of bamboo from my pocket. It contained the salt I'd stolen from home. Well, roasted hare is on the menu again today. One eye lay watching intently from a distance as I tossed the bloody hare's head to him. One eye was a stray dog in the village. Ever since I came back to this life, I've been feeding him raw meat every day. One eye was a grateful stray. It wasn't long before he found his own way to thank me. Mara, you're still out here digging for wild vegetables. Get home, quick, something terrible has happened at your place. The auntie from our village grabbed my hand and started pulling me home. Her voice was a mix of fear, pity, and morbid excitement. Auntie, slow down. I can't run. What's happened at my house? The auntie looked at my pale face and frail body, and a flicker of pity passed through her eyes. Your Tate's thing is gone. What? What's gone? That thing. Your Tate's thing was snatched away by a stray dog. Oh dear, that Tate kid, really. He's the most mischievous in the whole village, always stirring up trouble with cats and dogs. Well, there you have it. Something's happened now. I bit my lip hard, fighting back a smile. My voice trembled as I asked, no, it can't be. Without that, how will Tate carry on the family line and bring honor to our ancestors? 8. When I got home, the house was empty. Mom and Dad had already taken Tate to the hospital. A few days later, Mom and Dad came back with a female version of Tate. From then on, Tate had to be squatting down, just like me. My parents' faces looked even grimmer than when my grandparents had died. The day the stray dogs ran off with Tate's part, the whole village came to help. Those dogs, usually nothing but skin and bones from hunger, were unbelievably fierce that day. We finally managed to wrestle it from the dog's jaws, but half of it was already gone. Without that thing, Tate is treated just like me now. At first, Tate couldn't read the room. He threw tantrums, thinking our parents would still give in to his every whim, after being put in his place a few times without mercy. He finally faced reality. I watched our parents' hypocrisy with cold eyes. For Tate's future and a bit of cash, they had thrown me under the bus without a second thought. Now that Tate's lost his golden ticket, he's been cast aside too. But that wasn't all. Tate found himself ostracized by his former playmates. They taunted him, calling him a eunuch and a sissy. Some even pulled down his pants, jeering that they wanted to see what a girl looked like. Tate had never suffered such humiliation. He fought back, but he was hopelessly outnumbered. Every time, he'd come home battered and bruised. After a few such incidents, Tate stopped wanting to go outside altogether. He stayed holed up at home all day, his expression growing gloomier by the day. That day, I had just come home and saw Tate with his ear pressed against our parents' bedroom door, eavesdropping. When he saw me, Tate's expression didn't change in the slightest. My curiosity piqued. I quietly walked over and pressed my own ear to the door. My mother sobbed and cursed. "You good for nothing. We had a perfectly good life, but you just had to go fooling around outside. What are we supposed to do now?" My father's voice was heavy. "How much money do we have left at home? Let's go buy one. I hear you can get a boy for 5,000. Oh, boy, the year Tate turned 2. My father was caught in the act with a woman from another village by her husband. Not only did he get beaten to a pulp, but he also had to pay 500 in compensation. I knew it. With their strong preference for sons over daughters, how could they possibly be content with just one boy? Now that Tate is out of the picture, they've started worrying about who will take care of them in their old age. Hearing that big city hospitals had advanced medical care, the two of them secretly went for a checkup, hoping for a cure. Unfortunately, the doctor delivered the same grim final verdict, and so, there they are, holed up at home, discussing the future problems of carrying on the family line and their own retirement. I knew they were vicious, but I never imagined they'd stoop this low, even to the point of breaking the law. I glanced at Tate. His eyes were as dark as ink. Looks like I won't need to get involved. 9. My family's life is a chaotic mess, and the village chief's household is no less turbulent. When Preston was discharged from the hospital, the doctor gave him strict instructions to take it easy and avoid any further mishaps. Yet, less than a week after returning home, Preston got injured again, and Yvonne was undeniably involved. Yvonne no longer needed to stay in bed. Although she was still somewhat weak, she could move around normally. That day, Yvonne came back from outside, still holding the packet of instant noodles she'd just bought from the corner shop. Preston saw it and started clamoring for a bite. But Yvonne refused to share. Preston was the spoiled one at home, and she was no exception. During all those years she was bedridden, the village chief and his wife indulged her every whim, which had long since fostered a willful, spoiled, and self-centered personality. When Preston tried to snatch her things, she shoved him without a second thought. That single shove sent Preston sprawling, leaving him bloodied and with a scar the size of a bowl on his forehead. The village chief and his wife, cradling Preston, rushed frantically to the town clinic. Seeing the profuse bleeding, the doctor performed a quick bandage and immediately directed them to take him to the county hospital. Fortunately, the county hospital had ample plasma reserves, or Preston might very well have bled to death. The gash on Preston's forehead was so large it took over a dozen stitches to close. Everyone in the village said Yvonne was heartless to do something so vicious even to her own younger brother. Only I knew it was all thanks to that $1 bill and the curse of transference. That cursed dollar bill didn't just steal Preston's health, it made him downright unlucky. This time, Preston spent half a month in the hospital. When he came back, he was no longer Preston, but little Skinny. His face had hollowed out, his narrow eyes now looked like little beans, and his complexion was deathly pale. The village chief had to carry him the entire way. When the village chief and his wife returned and wanted to confront Yvonne, they found she had vanished without a trace. That very night, Yvonne was brought back by her uncle, with her elder brother present. The village chief naturally didn't dare lay a hand on Yvonne, however. I caught a fleeting glimpse of humiliation and ruthless determination in the village chief's eyes. I couldn't help but recall when I was a ghost, overhearing the village chief and his wife arguing fiercely about something. Hiss, it's been so long, I've forgotten what they were arguing about, but a voice in my head insisted it was absolutely crucial, and I had to go back and think it over properly. So, I went home, propped up my pillow, and after 3 days and nights of thinking, I finally remembered what it was. Yikes, I jolted upright from my deathbed. Oh my God, what an earth-shattering piece of gossip. If this got out, it wouldn't just rock our village, it would send shockwaves through the entire town. I wasn't in a hurry to spread this juicy news. For one, I had no proof, and for another, the timing wasn't right. Not only was the village chief's household in utter chaos, but most families in the village were having a hard time. Every single one of those brats who ate the instant noodles Preston gave them ended up in trouble. One had diarrhea today, another caught a cold tomorrow, two more came down with a fever the day after, a few fell and got their heads bloodied the next day, and a couple even fell into the manure pit the day after that. It was quite the spectacle, to say the least. Just as I was thoroughly enjoying the spectacle, my aunt rushed over and dragged me back home. 10. Oh, Mara, you poor child. What a terrible tragedy. I already had a sinking feeling about what was coming, but I pretended to know nothing. Auntie, what's wrong? Has something happened at my house? Auntie looked at me with pity. Oh, you'd better go back and see for yourself. The worn-out basket clattered to the ground, finally giving way under the strain and shattering into a dozen pieces. I scrambled and stumbled my way home, my exposed skin covered in scrapes and scratches, a truly pitiful sight. As I looked at the three bodies laid out side by side on the wooden planks, tears of overwhelming relief finally broke free from their restraints and streamed down my face unchecked. I fainted from crying several times before the funeral altar, occasionally earning a comment like, "What a filial child, such a pity she's a girl." I no longer had to live in constant fear, worrying I might be sold off at any moment, nor did I have to pretend to be frail anymore. My parents' desire for a son to bring glory to the family was urgent. They quickly found a middleman. The middleman sent word in less than a fortnight. The exchange, cash for goods, is set for tonight. Last night, Tate and I were eavesdropping at their door again. As soon as I heard the news, I knew today would bring trouble. So, while my parents were sound asleep, I moved all the household money to my secret hideout. Before dawn, I was out the door with a worn-out basket. By the time the officers from the local police station and the doctors from the clinic arrived, my parents' and Tate's bodies were already cold. I told them exactly what had happened at home. The forensic examiners conducted a thorough examination of my parents and Tate, while the police meticulously combed the house, leaving no stone unturned. In the end, they concluded that the three deaths were a case of murder-suicide. While cooking, Tate had poured half a bottle of dichlorvos into the food. He intended not only to kill our parents but also to end his own life. I was the only one who escaped unscathed. Having been driven out to work at the crack of dawn, my family's home was just 3 dilapidated rooms, including the main hall. Every other household in the village was better off than us. On top of that, since my parents and Tate had died violent deaths at home, everyone considered the place cursed. That's why no one ever tried to seize our ramshackle house. After my parents and Tate died, I no longer had to pretend to be frail or sleep in the woodshed. I gleefully moved into my parents' room. I started bringing the rabbits and pheasants I'd hidden in the mountains back home openly, without a care. The village chief and his wife stared wide-eyed as I breezed past them, carrying water with effortless speed. They rubbed their eyes, looking from me to their bedridden son and then to their lively, healthy daughter. Their eyes were filled with sheer terror. 11. Life at the village chief's house became even more chaotic and tumultuous. The village chief seemed like a different person, transforming from a smiling tiger into a weary old wolf. Yvonne, who was once doted on, now became the village chief's punching bag. She, who had never done a day's hard work, now had to take on all the household chores and a fair share of the field work. The village chief's wife, who had never been spoken a harsh word to, now often went to work in the fields with a face covered in bruises. The sounds of quarrels from the chief's house, and the wails of his wife and Yvonne, became the talk of the town, a grim accompaniment to everyone's meals. The village chief's wife called her elder brother. He came once, but later left with a face as dark as thunder. From then on, the torment inflicted upon the village chief's wife and Yvonne grew even worse. It's been 7 days since I last saw the village chief's wife and Yvonne. During these 7 days, I've often seen various people slipping in and out of the chief's old house. On this day, the village chief went to town for a meeting. I secretly climbed into his old house and found the chief's wife and Yvonne tied up in the woodshed. They were emaciated, with disheveled hair, sallow complexions, and their faces and bodies covered in bruises. I untied them. The village chief's wife sobbed. "He's a monster." He was going to sell Yvonne and me. My heart went out to them, and I pulled a handful of loose change and 2 fist-sized sweet potatoes from my pocket. "Auntie, take Yvonne and run. If you don't leave now, you won't make it out alive." The village chief's wife accepted the money and sweet potatoes, her face a mix of relief and guilt. "Thank you, Mara." With that, the village chief's wife fled with Yvonne. I didn't climb back over the wall and head home, humming a tune, until their figures had vanished at the far end of the path. The village chief returned from a meeting to find his wife and daughter had run away, his eyes blazing crimson with rage. Not long after, the village chief led a search party door to door, claiming his family had lost 50 yuan and 3 old laying hens. When they reached my house, the look in his eyes was particularly terrifying. He must have asked Preston and found out that the dollar Preston used to buy the instant noodles that day was actually meant for me all along. Preston just snatched it from my hand. Of course, the village chief wouldn't blame Preston. He'd only take his anger out on me, asking why I didn't take the money sooner, or why I didn't fight to get that dollar back from Preston. But what does any of this have to do with me? Harm set, harm get. I wasn't the least bit afraid and let them search me openly and without hesitation. The village chief left empty-handed. Before he went, he shot me one last look. A gaze of indescribable coldness and malice, if he hadn't been so busy lately. I'm sure he would have found 100 different ways to retaliate against me by now. 3 days later, the village chief's wife returned, accompanied by several police officers. The village chief was arrested on charges of abusing his wife and daughter, and the attempted trafficking of women and children. The entire village was in an uproar, with eyes blazing red. The village chief revealed an even bigger scandal. You shameless tramp. You took that little bastard to your brother, didn't you? Of course you did. If you could bear his child, he'd never turn his back on you. The uproar in the village grew even louder. So, it turned out Yvonne wasn't the village chief's daughter at all, but the child of his wife and her own brother. The only reason the chief had kept her around and doted on her was for the monthly 300 yuan from his brother-in-law and to secure his own son's future. After picking up that single dollar, Preston was on a fast track to ruin. With all hope seemingly lost, the village chief hastily contacted the so-called master, who immediately demanded 100,000 bucks. The village chief went to his brother-in-law for a loan, but his wife's older brother was naturally unwilling. He'd already winced at spending 10,000 for his own daughter. Now, being asked to fork over 100,000 for his nephew, even if he had the money, he wouldn't be willing. The village chief, nursing a grudge after his brother-in-law refused to lend him money, began taking his anger out on his wife and Yvonne at home. Yvonne, in particular, was the target of his rage. She was not only the bastard child born of his wife's affair with his own brother, a living disgrace to him, but also the thief who had stolen Preston's health and good fortune. Desperate to change his son's fate, the village chief hatched a plan to sell them off to raise the necessary funds, with her deepest, darkest secret exposed by the very man she shared a bed with. The village chief's wife, having nothing left to lose, came clean about the whole curse transfer scheme. She stared at the villagers who mocked her, her eyes wild with madness. You dare laugh at me? Do you know why your sons keep getting sick and having such rotten luck lately? Because they ate the instant noodles bought with that 1 yuan coin that day. Ha ha, ugh. Thanks to the village chief's influence and Preston's never-ending supply of pocket money, all the young boys in the village loved hanging out with him. In short, nearly every household son in the village had eaten that pack of instant noodles. At that moment, everyone forgot about watching the spectacle, thinking of their own son's recent conditions. The crowd fixed the village chief with furious glares, before the police could even react. The village chief was already being beaten by the enraged villagers. By the time the police managed to separate the villagers, the village chief was already dead. As for the villagers, a dozen or so elderly men and women, well into their 70s and 80s, shakily stepped forward. We're the ones who killed him. He harmed our grandchildren. He had to pay with his life. The police officers returned empty-handed. Wait, that's not right. They took the village chief's phone. 13. The town government sent a few propaganda officers to the village. Their campaign focused on 3 key messages. First, to raise awareness about the crime of trafficking women and children, emphasizing that both buying and selling are punishable offenses. No one shall traffic women and children in any form, including under the guise of kind-hearted adoption. Second, to promote the prohibition of marriage between close relatives. To drive the point home, they specifically used Yvonne's case as an example. Children born from consanguineous marriages are not only likely to have a weak constitution, but may also suffer from physical deformities and a variety of diseases. Third, one must not engage in any illegal or criminal acts, especially violence. For example, the whole village beating up the former village chief is unacceptable behavior. Everyone nodded in understanding. The government is right. We will all listen to the government. The outreach workers stayed in the village for 7 days and left satisfied in the end. Before leaving, one of the young women patted my head and said, "Little one, hardships are only temporary. We must face them bravely and rise to the challenge. Don't give up on your studies. Arm yourself with knowledge. If you ever have difficulties in the future, you can write to me." I nodded vigorously. "I understand, sister. I will study hard. I understand better than anyone that knowledge can change your destiny. If you want to escape these mountains, you have to study like your life depends on it." After the village chief passed away, Preston's grandmother moved in with his uncle's family. Preston's grandmother was kind to him, but as an elderly woman with little money, she couldn't afford to take him to the hospital. She did her best to steam a bowl of egg custard for him every day. One night during a heavy rainstorm, Preston was killed by a falling roof beam. As for the village chief's wife and Yvonne, the wife's sister-in-law ended up scratching both the wife and her own husband's faces bloody. In the end, the village chief's wife's sister-in-law threw both the wife and Yvonne out of the house. From then on, the village chief's wife and Yvonne vanished from public view. Some said they went to find work down south. While others claim to have seen the village chief's wife leaving with Yvonne and a man in a car, the village chief's wife's older brother was fired over the scandal, going from primary school principal back to being a farmer. The village chief's wife's sister-in-law quickly divorced her brother and took the children, leaving him all alone. Because of the scandal, the village chief's wife's parents could never hold their heads up high again. Only in death 6 months later did they find relief. Not long after, the young woman from the town's publicity department brought me some good news. The police contacted the so-called master through the village chief's phone and ultimately arrested him. That master harmed many people with his schemes, amassing illicit profits amounting to hundreds of thousands. The master's final destination could only be prison. One wonders if, while lamenting his fate behind bars, he will remember the countless families he shattered. Furthermore, when my parents died, the police found useful clues in their room. The traffickers and their intermediaries have now been apprehended as well. 14. I'm not sure if it was because of that handful of loose change and the 2 sweet potatoes. The village chief's wife didn't mention that the 1 yuan had been specifically set aside for me. In September, school started, and I began the 6th grade, to get an education. I was just like everyone else in the village, every day. I'd get up at the crack of dawn, sling my school bag over my shoulder, and trek for 2 hours along the mountain path to school. I wouldn't go home for lunch. My midday meal was simply a boiled sweet potato or an ear of corn, along with a wild vegetable flatbread. By the time I walked home from school in the evening, the sun had already set. In the dim lamplight, a small figure sat hunched over the dining table, writing furiously. I had lived through 5 years of such days, and to me, they were all the same. The only difference was that now I was alone at home, serving as both the head of the household and its sole member. The following year, I was admitted to County No. 1 high school with outstanding grades. It was at County No. 1 high school that I made my first true friend in life. She was a girl with a round, apple-like face, always full of laughter and mischief. We fought side by side, facing the battles of junior high together and conquering the high school entrance exams. 3 years, and then another 3, under the astonished gaze of the villagers, I was admitted to a top-tier university in northern China. On the mountain path, a tenacious figure pressed forward into the morning sun. Story 2. My best friend accompanied me to an interview at a top 100 company, where we happened to see a young man pass out from heatstroke. In the time it took me to call 120 and buy some water, my friend disappeared. Later, she got hired by the company. Sorry about that. I was trying to buy you some time, but the HR ended up offering me the job instead. My best friend kept flaunting her high-paying job every single day. Little did I know, the guy I saved turned out to be a wealthy, handsome heartthrob. To show his gratitude, he gifted me luxury cars and a mansion, then publicly professed his love. Before long, I became my best friend's boss, unable to handle the drastic shift in our fortunes. She snapped and dragged us both off the rooftop in a fit of madness. I opened my eyes and found myself back in that scorching summer day. This time, my best friend wiped the young man's sweat with concern and urged me kindly, "You'd better hurry to your interview. I've got this covered." Without a second thought, I turned and left without hesitation. She probably doesn't know. The thing I regret most from my past life is saving that man. Why does one choice make such a world of difference? Why am I not as lucky as you? My best friend Yolanda, with red-rimmed eyes, held onto me tightly as we fell from the 32nd floor. The icy wind held past my ears. With a deafening thud, my eyes snapped open. A young man lay sprawled on the sun-scorched street. Everything before my eyes felt hauntingly familiar. Oh, someone's got heat stroke. Just as I realized I had been reborn, my best friend Yolanda rushed over with an umbrella. She ran so frantically that she nearly twisted her ankle. Yolanda crouched down, wiped the young man's sweat, and poured mineral water into a bottle cap to give him a drink. She even waved at me before leaving. "Samantha, go ahead to your interview. The ambulance might take a while, and you worked hard for this job. I've got things covered here." Last time around, she complained it was too hot and told me not to get involved. She had water in her pocket but wouldn't share it, making me go buy some instead. Turned out she went for the interview while I was buying water. I tried calling her but couldn't get through, and thought she must have had an emergency. By the time the ambulance arrived and I rushed to the company drenched in sweat, I found out my best friend who accompanied me to the interview got the job. She said she was trying to buy me some time, but they called my name surprisingly quickly. The job offer was too good to pass up, so she jumped at the opportunity and got hired right away. Even though I felt uneasy, I figured I probably wouldn't have passed the interview anyway. Since she's a close friend, I let it slide. Better to keep it in the family, as they say. Little did I know she'd constantly brag about her amazing job with a smug attitude after joining the company. The young man I saved pulled some strings to make me her boss, and she was completely stunned. That day, she went berserk and jumped off the rooftop with me in her arms. The biting cold wind seemed to howl faintly in my ears, so Yolanda was reborn too, but she had no idea. In my past life, the decision I regretted most was giving up the job interview to save this man. Since fate has given me a second chance, I must seize this opportunity. 13 people have already gone in. I bet they've already picked someone internally, in the waiting room of Fusion Group. Dozens of candidates were waiting to interview for the product strategist position. With such attractive benefits and only one round of interviews, everyone was on edge. Maybe it's because I've already faced death once, but I felt completely calm inside. Next, Samantha. I followed the assistant into the interview room. There was only one HR person in the room. Although I got interconnections in my past life, I still had a decent understanding of the company and him. I froze. This HR interview doesn't care about academic credentials, only skills. My name is Samantha. These are my projects from the past 5 years since graduation. I've benchmarked against 6 companies, and 5 of their products became huge hits. Here's the real-time sales data. A 3-minute introduction that was thorough, insightful, and delivered smoothly and confidently. Well, I had practiced with Yolanda for days beforehand, otherwise, she wouldn't have had it memorized. I certainly wouldn't change the name on my resume just to get hired after saying something like that. Miss Samantha. I'm quite curious about the reasons behind the company's product failure. The HR manager adjusted her glasses and looked at me with keen interest. I shrugged sheepishly. It wasn't a failure in planning. The main issue was that on the day of the product launch, their company got reported for tax evasion. The HR person froze for a moment. He nodded at me, his eyes brimming with delight, right after the interview. The assistant informed me that I'd been hired and told me to report for duty in 3 days. I nodded calmly, though I was absolutely thrilled inside. Yolanda was waiting for me at the entrance of the building. When she heard about my successful interview, she pretended to be happy for me while still making a self-deprecating remark. You're destined for great things, unlike me. I had to play the hero in this scorching heat and ended up with a sunburn. Even as she said this, a look of delight spread across her face. She boarded the subway, the carriage was crowded, and Yolanda covered her nose with a look of disgust. I wish I'd rescued a Prince Charming instead, then he could save me from this stench of sweat. The 2 guys nearby were giving her dirty looks, but Yolanda was too busy scrolling through her phone to even notice. Suddenly, she grabbed my arm. Hey Samantha, isn't that you in this video? In this video titled Compassionate Help vs. Heartless Indifference, Yolanda devoted herself to caring for the heatstroke-stricken young man, earning praise as a guardian angel in the comments. Meanwhile, I stood by doing nothing and was widely criticized for being cold-hearted. Yolanda assumed I would try to defend myself like she did, only to end up looking like a fool, but I kept quiet and just silently slipped off my high heels. What are you doing? Just tired. Giving my feet a break, Yolanda seemed disappointed that I wasn't provoked. As she stepped off the subway, she glanced around, looking somewhat distracted. What are you looking for? Yolanda avoided my gaze. It's nothing. Just then, a chubby man got off from the rear door, quickly walking toward us with a large cabbage in hand. Yolanda reacted swiftly, darting out of the way in an instant. A second chance at life. The man glared at me, raising a cabbage menacingly, before the cabbage could be lifted overhead. It tumbled to the ground. He clutched his elbow in agony. Howling in pain from the deep red mark left by a high heel, I calmly put on my shoes while calling for staff. He was subdued shortly after. This guy has some mental issues and always calls himself the champion of justice. In a previous incident, he had an episode after watching the video and slammed a cabbage onto Yolanda's head, nearly giving her a concussion. I'd completely forgotten about this. But seeing him on the subway just now brought it all back. Yolanda seemed even more upset when she saw that I hadn't been hit like she was. I didn't pay any attention to the news either. Yolanda, however, was kind enough to post a clarification online. You've got it all wrong. My best friend was just in a hurry to get to her job interview. As long as that guy is okay, that's all that matters. I knew she just wanted to catch the attention of Lance, the wealthy heir. While the topic was trending, after starting the job, I was getting familiar with the work environment, and Yolanda didn't really message me much. To my surprise, in less than a week, just as I got off work, a sports car pulled up right in front of me, the window rolled down, and Yolanda pretended to be upset. Samantha, you're way too focused on work and not enough on friends. Come on, let's grab a bite to eat. Lance, in the driver's seat, looked every bit the gentleman as he smiled at me. A friend of my savior is a friend of mine. Make yourself at home. My heart clenched. After just a few days apart, Yolanda was getting into his car and had become his friend. That was quick, thanks, but no need. I've got plans with someone. Yolanda pursed her lips without insisting, tossing her hair dismissively. Then don't pressure Samantha. She's been frugal since childhood. Riding in such a fancy car would make her uncomfortable. The subway entrance is a 15-minute walk from the office. I had just crossed the street when raindrops started falling from the clear sky. The rain came down harder and faster, pattering noisily, catching me completely off guard. With no shelter around, I held my bag over my head and made a run for it. I tried to hail a taxi, but it didn't stop and splashed water all over me. Just then, a Rolls-Royce pulled up alongside the curb. I was fuming, thinking if he dared to splash me, I'd give him a piece of my mind. To my surprise, the car came to a gentle stop right in front of me. Tiberius chewed his gum and beckoned with a finger. The rain was pouring so hard that I didn't hesitate and quickly ducked into the car. Good thing you showed up, or I would have been drenched. He chuckled, got off work early and came straight over. What a coincidence. Perfect timing. He still has that same slacker look from his school days, which totally clashes with his police uniform. Ever since I gave you that love letter 8 years ago, you've never reached out to me, and you've been giving me the cold shoulder ever since. What made you suddenly decide to look me up 8 years ago? A love letter. For me, I was completely baffled. Yeah, I asked Yolanda to give it to you. Are you really forgetting or just pretending? Tiberius is Yolanda's secret crush. Back in the day, Yolanda covered her entire notebook with his name. Yolanda even got a tattoo for him. So I had no idea about the love letter. Well, she never gave it to me. Tiberius froze, and an awkward silence hung in the air for a few seconds. Good thing we made it to my place. I changed into some clean clothes and went to the restaurant with him. Tiberius was surprised to hear that I'd be assisting him with the investigation. Why are you helping me? Unless, didn't know what I had when the school bully was into me. Now I want him back. I nearly spat my coffee right in his face. Just then, Yolanda sent a video call. The moment Lance went to the restroom, she couldn't help but brag to me like crazy. Samantha, look at this whole table of sashimi, the 1982 Lafite, the brand new LV bag, and you turned down my invitation. I'm telling you, the guy I saved turned out to be a real Prince Charming. Noticing I was also in the restaurant, she shot me a look of utter disdain. Went on a blind date. So who is the weirdo this time? Bald or greasy? Show me a sneak peek. To avoid the pressure to get married, I did go on a few blind dates. Samantha often finds amusement in my embarrassment. Seeing Tiberius's curious expression, I really wanted to hang up the phone, but Yolanda still had her uses, so I had to patiently explain. Not a blind date, just an old classmate. You're going on blind dates with classmates now. Let me see which one's so special that you're hiding them from me. Tiberius had indeed become much more composed, calmly eating his cake with a smile on his face. Fine, if you're too embarrassed to look, then forget it. Don't get worked up about it either. I'll have Lance introduce you to some rich kid from his circle in a couple days. Before I could even open my mouth, Tiberius snatched the phone right out of my hand. Long time no see. Yolanda, who'd been chattering nonstop, suddenly fell silent. When did you two get together? She said, with a hint of reproach in her tone. Is get together too crude? How could I ever have thoughts about a guy my best friend dated? Don't talk nonsense. There's nothing between us. They spoke almost in unison. Maybe Lance was back, and Yolanda hung up in a hurry, afraid I might say something I shouldn't. Late at night, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. Yolanda sent another video call. Samantha, you have no idea how generous Lance is. He gave me gifts and even handed over the keys to his villa. Hold on, I'm just going to the restroom. I'll give you a tour in a bit. The camera pans, dazzling lights, leather sofas, exquisite decor, everything looks opulent and luxurious. It takes a good 5 to 8 minutes just to get from the bedroom to the bathroom, since we're such good friends. I'll take pity on you and let you crash here for a few nights. Look at you, you're totally staring, eyes wide open. She swayed the camera and asked, so, what do you think? Pretty impressive, huh? I wiped the sweat from my palms. Huge, absolutely huge. So huge that I was covered in blood, and it took Lance half an hour just to drag me from the bathroom to the bedroom. But Yolanda didn't notice my expression. She was absolutely thrilled. Lance is so thoughtful. I just mentioned wanting to work with you, and he said your company is run by his uncle. He'll get me in there in a couple of days. Don't worry, if I become your boss, I'll make sure to look out for you. Over the next few days, I worked hard and stayed focused, while Yolanda flooded her social media feed nonstop. Luxury goods, jewelry, gourmet food. A mutual friend jokingly commented asking if she'd landed a sugar daddy. She played it coy. Not exactly a sugar daddy, just a trust fund kid. He hasn't agreed to anything yet. Men don't value what comes too easy. I'm still testing the waters. I just smiled without saying a word. I've finally wrapped up all the odd jobs I had these days, and now I'm feeling completely at loose ends. Charles called us into the conference room for a meeting. A rather troublesome client named Arthur showed up at our company. His family runs a curtain business, and a manufacturer placed a large custom order with them. The order volume is so massive that we could practically buy another factory with it. Arthur is fully committed to this business, and the fabric selection is exceptionally meticulous. In theory, this batch offers great value for money and promises a win-win collaboration, but a critical mistake has occurred. The initial mold dimensions were too small. This ruined the entire batch of curtains. Arthur begged our CEO to help devise a plan to sell them at a discount to recoup some losses, then announced the factory's closure. The plan was straightforward. The tricky part is, even if we pull it off and his company goes under, our reputation takes a hit too. The catch is, Arthur had a brief encounter with our CEO, so it's awkward for him to say no. The senior strategists didn't want to touch it either, using their busy schedules as an excuse to pass it to me. Why not let Samantha give it a shot? Didn't she successfully launch several products before? Charles frowned. She's just an intern. Is she really up to the task? Arthur seemed to get the picture and waved his hand dismissively. If it's not possible, forget it. I won't force you. Just take your time selling it. It's just a shame. I've worked my whole life for nothing. Sigh. His face etched with weariness and disappointment. He turned to leave. I stood up. Charles, I can give it a shot. Charles looked rather displeased, though he held his tongue out of politeness. But the look in his eyes made it clear he wished he could fire me on the spot. In the previous life, Yolanda certainly didn't step up. It was only later when she told me about it that I found it somewhat intriguing. I took some time to think it over, although that plan was purely theoretical. But now, the chance to put it into practice has arrived. Everything that exists has its value. The fabric is synthetic. If you can turn fabric into curtains, you can certainly repurpose those curtains into something else. In the plan, I repurposed some of the material into a radiator cover curtain. This has limited appeal in southern regions. In northern regions, every household has radiators, so dust accumulation is a common occurrence. Then we launched promotional campaigns. Thanks to the high-quality fabric and exquisite patterns, the results were excellent. Subsequently, all curtains were reprocessed and redesigned, successfully opening up the market. Not only did Arthur's company not go under, it actually started operating successfully. The news even made it to the trending topics, which ended up being free advertising for the group. The CEO praised me in front of the whole company and then called me into the conference room. The banner Arthur sent, the tea set I bought on my business trip, and the bonus I've asked HR to add to your paycheck at the end of the month. Consider these as tokens of appreciation. I had just accepted when the secretary knocked on the door. Charles, Lance is here. Yolanda followed Lance into the room. Uncle, this is my friend who's looking for a job. He spotted me right away. What a coincidence. Her best friend is here too. How about we put them in the same department? The secretary hesitated. HR's planning team is fully staffed. The only opening left is for a department manager. Yolanda was over the moon, but she still pretended to be a bit hesitant. Lance, isn't it a bit too soon for you to become a manager right after joining? Lance patted her hand reassuringly. Don't worry, my uncle will arrange someone to mentor you. Charles swiveled his chair, his eyes never leaving Yolanda. Having a mentor is a given, but do you have any notable achievements to your name? Yolanda shook her head. But without ability, it's hard to gain people's respect. She was stunned, trying to get hired through connections. Charles is technically Lance's uncle, but he's a shrewd operator who doesn't suffer fools gladly. Back when I first joined the company, he gave me an incredibly hard time. He would have turned me down flat if I hadn't proven myself capable, but that's none of my business now. I grabbed my things and was about to leave. Just as I took a step, someone called out to stop me. Samantha, I've always valued talent. You're young but have exceptional insight and a bright future. Starting today, you're the department manager. Well, Lance, my friend, aren't you close with Samantha? Maybe she can show you the ropes. Once you prove yourself, Uncle will definitely promote you, the secretary muttered under her breath, jumping from intern straight to department manager. This is highly unusual. Yolanda's face turned grim. Lance tugged at her sleeve, and Yolanda reluctantly agreed. All right, thank you, Uncle, for now. After leaving the conference room, Lance had to leave early for another matter. I took Yolanda to her workstation and explained her daily responsibilities to her. She grew a bit impatient, glancing around restlessly. Just then, the vice president handed me a stack of documents. Samantha, congratulations on your quick promotion. These are the new projects. Please distribute them to the team. Every major company is fighting tooth and nail for that floral theme park project, but they have high hopes for our firm. I trust your department can seal the deal flawlessly. As soon as the VP left, Yolanda begged me, Samantha, I got in through connections and want to work on a big project to prove myself. Can you take me under your wing for this one? So she joined the company specifically for this project after all. A few colleagues weren't too pleased after hearing that. Why does the newbie get to pick projects first? Stop arguing. She got in through connections. Just let her have it. Truth be told, None of them really wanted to take on such a big project anyway, so they just went along with it. Yolanda never got along with these people in her past life either, yet at this moment, she wore an expression of gracious composure. How about this? Once the proposal is nearly finished, I'll treat everyone to karaoke. In the following period, Yolanda was inundated with gifts, yet she remained coy and gave Lance no answer. She threw herself into learning the project. Projecting a powerful professional image that drove Lance wild, he waited for Yolanda downstairs at the office every day, making all the coworkers incredibly envious. Soon enough, a month had passed. With everyone's joint efforts, the Flower Sea project plan was nearly complete. Yolanda kept her promise and took us out for karaoke. At the KTV, Yolanda was texting Lance with a sweet smile on her face. She insisted on paying the bill and was very generous, which instantly brought her closer to several colleagues. Rumor has it that Lance is pursuing her, and their colleagues are all green with envy. But Yolanda, rich kids are always fickle, you'd better watch out. Yolanda held the sports car key, lost in thought. A senior employee curled their lip and said, Lance is such a devoted man. His ex-girlfriend passed away 6 years ago, and he hasn't been in a relationship since. It's not like he couldn't have any woman he wanted. But in all these 6 years, he's never been seen with anyone publicly, let alone gifted cars or apartments. I think you saved him. Honestly, he's opened his heart to you. Yolanda was over the moon and downed a glass of red wine in one go. She shook her head at me. Samantha, don't you think Lance is better than Tiberius? But since we're on the topic, I should tell you, Tiberius' parents are intellectuals. They might not approve of you. You don't have to gamble with your own happiness just to spite me. I let out a cold snort. She really thinks too highly of herself. She's got her own plate full, yet she's worried about others eyeing the pot. As we left the KTV, Tiberius was leaning casually against the Rolls-Royce, smoking a cigarette. Under the streetlight, he looked relaxed and effortlessly cool. Wow, handsome guy. Several colleagues around were swooning over him. Yolanda hadn't seen Tiberius in years. She looked at me with a hint of jealousy in her eyes. Looking for you. No, he's here for you. Tiberius cut her off. The colleagues gasped in surprise. Yolanda, you're amazing. How do you always meet such tall, rich, and handsome guys? Tiberius stubbed out his cigarette, a smirk playing on his lips. Don't get me wrong. I just want to ask, why did you intercept the love letter I wrote to Samantha back then? You weren't secretly crushing on me, were you? Tiberius grinned mischievously while Yolanda looked visibly flustered. All their co-workers were watching the drama unfold with keen interest. Just then, someone stepped out of the sports car parked on the other side of the KTV. It was Lance, elegantly handing a large bouquet of roses to Yolanda while glancing at her short skirt. Aren't your legs cold and so little? Let's get in the car. Relieved. Yolanda immediately linked arms with him. Oh, I almost forgot to introduce you. This is Lance, my boyfriend. Today marks the official start of our relationship, and you're all our witnesses. Lance was beaming with joy. He went back to the car to grab some small gifts and handed them out to each of us. Hope you'll look out for Yolanda a bit more from now on. The coworkers were absolutely green with envy. He walked over and lit a cigarette for Tiberius. Tiberius didn't take it. He draped his coat over my shoulders. Bro, don't overthink it. I'm not interested in your girlfriend. It was true in high school, and it's still true now. Guess I'm just the type who stays loyal to one path. The goddess in my heart has always been the same. Lance's eyes held an inscrutable depth as he waved his hand with a light laugh. No need to explain. Bro, I didn't take it to heart. Yolanda bit her lip and drew closer to Lance, linking arms with him more intimately. I did intercept the love letter, but it was for Samantha's studies. Nothing else. Don't flatter yourself. Tiberius chuckled. All right. I suppose I was being presumptuous. What do you mean? That's enough. Yolanda, it's getting chilly out. Let's head home. Got in the car. I looked puzzled and asked, what are you doing here? I've been keeping an eye on Lance. Saw him come here and just happened to spot you. I just mentioned to you a couple of days ago that I suspected him of stealing trade secrets, and you started tailing him. Isn't that a bit much? Of course not. I suspect he's connected to other cases, but I can't elaborate on that. I understand completely, but Officer Tiberius, while you're conducting your investigation, please don't use past incidents as excuses next time. Tiberius remained silent. I finally pulled up in front of the flower shop. I wasn't using you as an excuse. I meant what I said. I still didn't get the flowers. Because the flower shop had already closed, he felt a tinge of regret. I'll come earlier tomorrow. This flower shop is for sale. Then I'll go to another florist. Samantha, are you being considerate, or are you gently letting me down? His eyes were so clear, I couldn't help but smile. Neither. Then, once the case is closed, give me this flower shop as a gift. We missed out on our entire youth, and we missed our past life too. In this lifetime, I don't want to miss out anymore. The next day at work, Yolanda was late. She usually loves wearing skirts, but today she's actually in pants. There's a bruise on her wrist. When a colleague asked what happened, she quickly covered it up. Oh, it's nothing. I just took a tumble down the stairs. The exact same injury, but much less severe than mine. In his past life, Lance gifted villas and mansions. I think calling emergency services was enough. He didn't need to go that far. I never expected him to later present roses and confess his feelings. I turned him down straight away. Sorry if I came on too strong. How about letting me take you to dinner to make up for it? I figured he wouldn't let it go unless I agreed, so I said yes to the meal. We went to a Korean restaurant that day. I got tipsy after just a small sip of rice wine. He offered to walk me home, but I declined. That night, as I was stumbling back to my apartment complex, a stranger stopped me with vulgar remarks and grabbed me. I somehow blacked out at that moment. The next day, I woke up in Lance's villa. My body was covered in wounds, with a searing pain down below. I still remember the heartbroken look on Lance's face. I got there too late, and since I didn't know where you lived, I brought you back to my place. He even insisted on taking me to file a police report. It was too dark for me to remember the man's face. No abnormal fluids were detected in the body, so the case was shelved. This whole situation drove me to the brink of a breakdown. It was Lance's patient and gentle care that gradually helped me recover. Oh no, why won't the computer turn on? Yolanda looked anxious. The system is corrupted. The entire month's project proposal is gone. Charles slammed the table in a fit of rage. As the person in charge, how could you not have the basic sense to back it up? The Flower Sea project lead needs the proposal in 2 days. Figure it out, if we don't land this project. You're all fired. Yolanda isn't afraid of getting fired, but I need this job. After lunch break, Yolanda took sick leave with an apologetic look on her face. Samantha, it's all my fault. I had a fall yesterday and crashed the system today. I still remember parts of the proposal. I'll work on it overnight. Don't bother. 2 days won't be enough to finish it. Focus on recovering. I'll put together a simplified version on my end. I knew all along she'd hand the proposal over to Lance. So I used the excuse of a field survey to secretly follow her. Yolanda went to a tattoo parlor and had the tattoo that previously read Tiberius removed. She was startled when she saw me as she came out. What are you doing here? Seeing the swelling on her arm, I couldn't help but ask, Yolanda, is he really worth it? To be honest, I hate Yolanda. She's the one who killed me. But honestly, even if she hadn't harmed me that day, I didn't want to live anymore. Lance is just a pervert. His affection feels suffocating. He controls and coerces me. I feel like a walking corpse. That day I wanted to tell her I couldn't go on, but she lashed out before I could. We were really close back in our school days. Her mother passed away when she was very young, and her stepmother mistreated her so badly she often went hungry. We were deskmates once, and after I shared some food with her, she considered me her best friend. She never hid her true feelings from me and was willing to open up about her deepest wounds. Back then, classmates often compared us. Those jealous of my academic performance would whisper things in her ear. They claimed I befriended her just to feel superior. She didn't believe it. Later, when Tiberius started hanging out with us regularly, she noticed his interest in me. In that youthful, naive phase, she began secretly competing with me, and then it all spiraled out of control. Whenever I was in trouble or facing difficulties, she never hesitated to step up. I believe she would be willing to endure hardships together. It's just her pride and ego that make it hard for her to accept that I'm doing better than her. Did you fall? Or did Lance hit you? Yolanda abruptly shook off my hand and laughed. What do you want to hear? That Lance abused me, forced me to get the tattoo removed. That I'm crying and begging to break up. Well, sorry to disappoint you. Lance is handsome, rich, caring, and gentle, just a bit wild in bed. Isn't it all because he loves me? I enjoy it, I love it, and I wanted to remove the tattoo myself. Is that clear enough for you? She dangled the car keys in her hand. Some people would sell a kidney just to get an iPhone, so I get a little hurt, but I get all this, seeing you seethe with envy, watching my stepmom and brother kiss up to me, totally worth it, don't you think? Listen, Samantha, don't act like you know everything. Being that full of yourself never ends well. Hey, need a ride? I can give you a lift. In that case, there's no need to say anything more. I went to the police station. Tiberius saw me out, his face grim. You risked your future just to help me catch Lance. I looked at him with a smile. That's right. So how are you going to repay me? No need for repayment. I'll take care of you. His tone was light, but his face was set with determination. Mainly, I don't want to marry above my station. He caught up with me. What are you talking about? Marry above your station. My parents have adored you since we were kids. Otherwise, why would I keep inviting you to my place? Otherwise, why haven't they been nagging me all these years? His colleague walked by, and I glanced at my watch, feeling a bit awkward. I still need to clock back in. Let's talk later. 2 days later, at the investment promotion conference of Flower Sea Group. Several major media companies eagerly pitched their proposals. Charles frowned over the project his colleagues had worked on overnight. As he looked at his nephew Lance before him, his emotions grew even more conflicted. After all, he's the child of my half-brother. It would be embarrassing to lose to someone younger, Charles thought. Worst case, he could just let him have it gracefully. Losing a major project stings. But I'll make sure to give the team a proper talking to when I get back. Everyone was in awe as Lance spoke eloquently. Just as it was Charles's turn, the meeting room doors swung open. A young police officer and a young girl walked in. I slowly entered under the gaze of everyone. Tiberius waved dismissively from the couch, saying to the flower field manager, "No worries, you all chat first. I'll just enjoy the show." I placed the file folder in front of Charles. "What's this? Sorry for the delay. But this is actually our plan." Charles was completely baffled. He opened the document folder, exquisite blueprints, detailed CAD construction drawings, and promotional materials, including casino operation plans, holiday event schedules, everything you could possibly need. After reviewing the proposal, everyone nodded in approval, and the flower field manager even applauded, as expected of the top media company. "This proposal is meticulous and covers every detail, absolutely. In my past life, I barely slept for a month while working on this project. I was so worried Yolanda might pull something this time around, so I had a backup plan ready. All Yolanda deleted was just my plan B anyway." The head of Flower C immediately greenlit the collaboration with Charles. Everyone in the conference room dispersed. Tiberius stepped right in front of Lance, blocking his path. "This is the raw footage I captured in the bar's private room. That's you and your girlfriend in the video, isn't it? And this document is the original file for your proposal." Where did this plan even come from? Yolanda copied the database from the computer. She also shredded all the data on the computer. She thought I had no evidence on my end, but in fact, the original files for Plan B were in my personal notebook. How about we take a trip to the station for a chat? Lance's father personally apologized to his own brother. In the end, Charles chose to forgive his nephew. However, through both overt and covert means, Charles managed to tarnish Gwanda Group's reputation. Meanwhile, far from blaming Yolanda, Lance actually bailed her out. Even Tiberius was taken aback. Seems he's genuinely in love with Yolanda. That caught me by surprise too. But after this incident, the company let her go. I laughed. Not long after, she blocked me too. I figure she made her own choices. As for her friendship, from the moment I started over, I had no intention of rekindling it. This should have been the end of it. But a month later, I unexpectedly got a call from an unknown number. My salary doubled because I made Charles look good. Tiberius insisted I treat him to a meal. We were enjoying our meal when suddenly an unknown call came through. It was Yolanda. Her voice trembled as she said, "Samantha, help me. No one else can. I tried to break up with Tiberius yesterday. He suggested one last dinner together, and just now I overheard him planning to sell me abroad. Just tonight, a sudden slap and sobbing came through the phone. Yolanda, why did you betray me? Why are you leaving me? Why?" The sound of it made me tremble. The call got disconnected, so Tiberius phoned the station to have them trace Yolanda's call location, check the flight information. Samantha. Not only is Yolanda a victim, I suspect Lance is also connected to his first love's death. Tiberius isn't keeping me in the dark anymore. I just found out, 8 years ago, Lance's first love was found brutally murdered, completely naked in a KTV private room. Over 10 different bodily fluids were found inside her, which means she was assaulted by more than 10 people before her death, as the victim's boyfriend. Lance took everyone to court and got them sentenced to death. Yet we completely overlooked Lance's own role in this. Moreover, Lance's mother had a mental illness, but he always appeared perfectly normal, so no one suspected he might be ill too. Multiple pieces of information came together to form a single narrative. I suddenly remembered my past life, that thick stack of photographs. I know where it is. I'll go with you. In the interrogation room, Tiberius used the clues I provided to fish for information. Lance finally confessed everything about his first love's death. He no longer maintained that gentlemanly demeanor, instead revealing a ferocious expression. "I don't understand. Why do they all leave me? I have wealth, power, and good looks. Why, just like my mother, save me only to abandon me, mainly because you're insane." Tiberius spoke bluntly. "Should the sick be abandoned, they all deserve to die, every last one of them." "But I don't understand. How did you know the villa I was in had a basement?" Tiberius shook his head and walked out. "In my past life, I was threatened and harassed by an anonymous person. On the verge of a mental breakdown, I stumbled upon a basement while recuperating at the villa. Inside, I discovered not only my nude photos but also a stack of pictures featuring a young girl. At the time, I had no idea who she was. I just find Lance terrifying when I tried to break up with him. He slammed me violently against the wall. He dragged me from the bathroom to the bedroom, then threw me into the basement, just as expected. I hadn't eaten for 3 days when I told him I was wrong and shouldn't have brought up breaking up. He held me and cried, then forgave me. He was monitoring my movements to work, and I even received anonymous nude photo threats. It finally dawned on me that he had orchestrated everything that happened that night. He's a complete psycho and a control freak. He has this twisted mentality of destroying what he can't possess. Fortunately, Yolanda was rescued in time. Though she survived, she lost the ability to have children. Tiberius and I went to see her. Yolanda had lost her usual radiance, her face pale and drained. Seeing us enter together, she looked up at me. Samantha, I've been wondering for days. How did you find me in the basement? It just hit me. You've been reborn too, haven't you? Tiberius frowned. Reborn? Did you hit your head or something? I told him to wait for me outside. I'm not leaving. Tiberius looked defiant. Hurry up. Don't worry, she won't do anything to me. Tiberius repeated it over and over. I'll be right outside if you need me. We were the only two left in the room. Yolanda grabbed my arm, her eyes bloodshot. Samantha, why would you do this to me? I stared straight at her. Go on, tell me, how have I treated you? She looked resentful. If you knew Lance was a creep all along, why didn't you tell me? Didn't I tell you? But were you even listening? You've always been like this, only believing what I say after experiencing it yourself. Back in school, I played a piano piece at the talent show. You begged me to teach you, but I warned you that practicing was tough and required patience. You thought I was refusing and gave me the silent treatment. For your birthday, I spent 3 years' worth of New Year's money to buy you an electronic keyboard. You only learned one tune after a week. Then tearfully told me your stepmother smashed it, though she claimed you sold it. During our naive teenage years, you had a crush on our class monitor, academically bright, kind-hearted. I encouraged you to study hard so you could meet him at the top. You found studying exhausting and asked if I liked anyone. I mentioned Tiberius was decent but too fond of fighting, and I wanted to focus on graduation first. You suddenly shifted gears, bringing up Tiberius in every conversation. Even intercepting the love letters he wrote to me. She cut me off. All I want is a good life. Is that so wrong? I looked at her. Then what did I do wrong? You came job hunting with me, saw the great benefits, rushed to interview first, watched Lance give me luxury cars and a villa, and let jealousy destroy me. What exactly did I do to deserve that? In this lifetime, you rushed to save him first. I respected the choice you wanted to make, so tell me, what did I do wrong? You lack confidence and want to prove you're no worse than me, treating me like an enemy. What did I ever do wrong? Of course, I was wrong to have always considered you a friend. I just want to make one thing clear. Your life is not my doing. It's all your own choices. Tears streamed down Yolanda's face as she murmured, That's not true. That's not true at all. Then what is the truth? Honestly, it doesn't matter to me anymore. The midday sun was brilliantly bright when I stepped out of the hospital. Tiberius was also quite curious, so I really want to ask, how did you know Lance would be there? I told him I'd died once and come back reborn. Do you believe me? I expected him to dismiss it as a joke with a scoff. To my surprise, he fell silent for a long moment before finally looking up with resolve. I believe you. Every word you say, then give me a chance to protect you for the rest of my life. All right. I shot him a glare and turned to leave. Look at you, ignoring me and walking so fast. Didn't someone promise to take over the flower shop for me? Did you forget? So, you're saying yes. What are you waiting for? If the shop gets sold, I might change my mind. He hurried after me and pulled me into a tight embrace. Then you've lost your chance to back out. A faint blush appeared on Tiberius's face. I'll take over that flower shop then. Story 2. I am the female protagonist of an apocalyptic PO novel. I am gentle and kind, and I am loved by everyone. Until the transmigrating girl appeared, she took everything away from me. She pointed at me and called me a saintess with no brains, a parasitic flower whose mind was full of nothing but men. But she didn't know that I am a much more vicious woman than anyone else. All the false appearances are just disguises to achieve my goals. The so-called tenderness is nothing but the pity of a superior for an inferior. In the face of the apocalypse, do the saintesses die first? No, the saintesses will always exist. 1. The bloated and huge lump of flesh kept wriggling. Many human limbs protruded from all parts of the lump of flesh, supporting it to move slowly. There was a cavity in the center of the lump of flesh, which was its mouth. Inside the mouth, besides the dense teeth, there were also human eyeballs growing. The eyeballs looked around eerily, and then suddenly stopped at the front. A little cat stood helplessly in front of the lump of flesh, and the cat let out a threatening growl. The lump of flesh found its prey and let out a low growl like a laugh. The limbs waved and crawled wildly on the ground, and the bloated body of the lump of flesh seemed to become light, quickly approaching the little cat. The little cat's speed was no match for the lump of flesh at all. The little cat meowed desperately a few times, and all the fur on its body stood on end. Just as the lump of flesh was about to have a hearty meal, I reached up my hand and quickly picked up the little cat. The body of the lump of flesh stopped suddenly, and the eyeballs all over its mouth stared at me eerily. I held the little cat's fragile body and soothed it gently, looking at the lump of flesh with a calm gaze. "Anna, it's dangerous." I was suddenly pulled over, and Samuel carefully hugged me and protected me under his body. The lump of flesh became restless, and the limbs waved quickly again. Samuel clenched the dagger and cut his palm. The blood flowed down his palm and onto the ground, and it seemed to have a consciousness as it climbed up the body of the lump of flesh. The moment the blood covered the lump of flesh, Samuel clenched his fist, and the blood instantly turned into black flames, engulfing the lump of flesh. The lump of flesh exploded like a balloon, and the flames burned the lump of flesh completely clean. Samuel held my body tightly, as if protecting something fragile. "Anna, don't do such a dangerous thing next time." I smiled at him, and my smile was pitiful and vulnerable. I can't turn a blind eye to the weak. I hugged the little cat affectionately, and the little cat meowed a few times. As if responding to me, Samuel smiled helplessly. But there was no trace of blame in his eyes, because Samuel was also a teenager I saved. "I know you're kind, but I don't want you to get hurt because of it." Seeing me nodding slightly, Samuel was satisfied and took my hand, leading me towards the safe zone. An eyeball rolled to my feet. It was the eyeball from the mouth of the lump of flesh. I turned my face, and where Samuel couldn't see, I smiled brightly at the eyeball. "If you want to show your kindness and weakness, then at the beginning of the story, please save a cat, too." In 2053, the apocalypse arrived. All kinds of monsters ran amok everywhere, and now the human population was only 1/5 of what it used to be. At the same time, some humans began to awaken their superpowers. I am one of the superpower holders, a lonely little white flower in the face of the apocalypse. I escaped from the laboratory and traveled alone in the apocalypse where monsters were everywhere. I met Samuel not long ago. At that time, he was on the verge of death, and his body was stained black with blood. I saved him and treated his wounds. I shared my food with him, went out to find food for him, and hunted small animals. Under my careful care for many days, Samuel recovered. The first thing he saw when he woke up was my gentle eyes like flowing water. In the apocalypse, there are very few people who can maintain their humanity. But if someone is as simple and kind as a piece of uncarved jade, they will be called a saintess in the apocalypse. So what if I'm a saintess? Do I have to only care about myself and sacrifice others just to survive? Why is kindness disliked? After Samuel recovered, he traveled with me. On the way, we saved many people, including not only superpower holders but also injured ordinary people. We established a safe zone together to protect the people in need in the apocalypse. Samuel held my hand in one hand and dragged a sack in the other, which was filled with all kinds of food and water. I held the sleeping little cat and stared intently at Samuel's bleeding palm. "Samuel, it's still bleeding." Samuel smiled at me and told me he was okay. "If you don't deal with it properly, it will get infected." I stopped, gently put the little cat on the ground, took out a clean handkerchief from my bag, and carefully bandaged his palm. "Okay, let's go." I picked up the little cat again and smiled at him, unexpectedly. I tilted my body and was pulled into Samuel's arms. The little cat was awakened by the commotion. It meowed a few times and nimbly jumped onto Samuel's shoulder. "It's really great to meet you in the apocalypse." Samuel bent down and whispered in my ear. He held my face in his hands, and just as he was about to make a further move, the cat on his shoulder scratched his cheek hard. Samuel stepped back a few steps in pain, and the cat seemed to have succeeded in its scheme. It jumped into my arms with a whoosh. I couldn't help laughing out loud and saw Samuel staring at the cat resentfully. While Samuel was secretly competing with the cat, we returned to the safe zone. 3. The safe zone was established inside an abandoned school. In the early days of its establishment, I and several other superpower holders collected materials and built a fairly solid city wall. We raised animals and grew vegetables in the safe zone. At first, only I, Samuel, and a few other superpower holders lived here. As I kept bringing back ordinary people, it became a fairly large safe area. "Welcome back." Stephen adjusted his glasses frame and nodded at Samuel. Stephen was also a superpower holder I saved before. He was quite smart, and he was in charge of the management and distribution of items in the safe zone. Stephen's eyes glanced at the little cat in my arms, and he frowned slightly for a moment. "Anna, why did you bring something back again?" I blinked my eyes and held the little cat in my arms tighter. "If I don't save it, it will die." I lowered my head and stroked the little cat's furry head. "It's so pitiful. Why can't I save it? I have a special love and pity for weak things." Stephen sighed, but his tone revealed a hint of doting and helplessness. "Just this once. If you bring something back again, the safe zone won't be able to hold it." I nodded repeatedly and walked towards the kitchen with the little cat in my arms. The little cat let out a low threatening growl, and several black tentacles emerged from its black fur. The black tentacles pointed at Steven's back, and the black fur stood on end. "Good boy, don't be angry." I gently stroked the cat's chin, and the tentacles slowly retracted into the cat's body. I put the cat on the ground, washed my hands, and started preparing dinner. I chopped the fresh meat into pieces, added it to the white porridge, and put a little salt in it. This was the simple dinner in the safe zone. After finishing this, I threw a piece of fresh raw meat on the ground, and the cat happily came over, stretched out its black tentacles to grab the meat, and a big mouth opened on its back, swallowing the meat whole. The cat is really cute. The cat rubbed against my feet, and its fur stained with blood was wet. I put the porridge in small bowls on the cart and walked towards the infirmary while singing a brisk tune, for the so-called infirmary was actually a classroom that had been converted. Most of the ordinary people I brought back were injured, so they were all placed here. The healthy people were responsible for various affairs inside the safe zone, and the superpower holders were responsible for going out to find supplies and fighting against the invading monsters, of course. The number of healthy people was small, and the superpower holders were even fewer. All the people here were those I brought back because I thought they were too pitiful. When they saw me, their eyes lit up. I distributed the bowls and served them porridge. Someone tugged at the corner of my clothes. I looked down and saw a little girl with only one eye. The little girl pointed at the woman sitting slumped on the ground in the corner who had no feet. That was her mother. In order to save her daughter, her legs had been eaten by monsters. I understood and filled a bowl of porridge, walked up to the woman, squatted down, and asked, "Can you eat by yourself?" The woman nodded, and tears fell from her eyes. "Thank you, Lady Anna, you are so kind." The woman sobbed in a trembling voice and stuffed the porridge into her mouth. The little girl nodded obediently. She seemed to like the cat very much and casually hugged the cat in her arms. The cat struggled for a while and then lay helplessly in the little girl's arms. "Thank you for saving us, Sister Anna." The little girl leaned close to me and took out a small yellow flower from her pocket. It was a small daisy, as green and innocent as the little girl in front of me. I put the daisy in my pocket and carefully put it away. At this moment, the bell at the gate rang. That was the signal that the search team had all returned. I casually said a few words to the injured people and then left. The cat struggled hard to break free from the little girl's arms and followed me closely. 5. When I returned to the hall, besides several superpower holders I was familiar with, there was also a strange face I had never seen before. It was a lovely girl. She looked no more than 18 years old, in contrast to her sweet appearance. The look she gave me was extremely cold. It's really strange. We were clearly meeting for the first time. Why could I feel such great hostility from her? I tilted my head in confusion, and this action seemed to make the girl even more dissatisfied. The look she gave me became even more disgusted. The cat let out a low growl of threat, but no one noticed it, and no one noticed me either. In the past, as long as I was around, everyone would focus their attention on me, but at this moment, everyone was paying attention to the girl. A sense of unease surrounded me, making me a little surprised. Who is this?" I took a few steps forward and put on my signature smile. As if they finally noticed my arrival, everyone finally turned their attention to me. "Anna, this is Thomas," who had just returned from the reconnaissance, took a few steps forward and introduced the girl to me. I noticed that there were several layers of bandages wrapped around Thomas's head, and he seemed to have been seriously injured. "My name is Ruby. Nice to meet you." Ruby stepped forward generously and held out her hand to me. "Ruby, she saved me." Thomas smiled shyly. Ruby's eyes stared at me intently, as if she wanted to stare a hole through me. I responded to her and shook her hand. "Anna, I know about you. Everyone has introduced you to me." Ruby smiled brightly, and her every move was very refreshing. A strong sense of unease filled my heart, and I forced down the excitement in my heart and returned a gentle smile. "Nice to meet you." "Thank you for saving Thomas." A flash of mockery passed through Ruby's eyes, but she quickly returned to a polite look. "You're welcome. It's just a piece of cake. I only save people who are valuable." After she finished speaking, she glanced at Stephen, and Stephen showed an appreciative expression. 6. I suddenly understood where the sense of unease came from. She clearly seemed to know everything as if she had known it for a long time, even though we were meeting for the first time. "I don't like such a person. Are you a superpower holder?" Samuel, who had been silent beside me, spoke up faintly, his cold eyes fixed on Ruby. Ruby put her hands on her hips and nodded. She said proudly, "My superpowers are enhanced physical fitness and the ability to foresee the future." Foresee the future? That's impossible. After Ruby finished speaking, almost everyone was surprised. "This is a top-level superpower. You're not lying, are you?" Stephen pushed his glasses and looked at Ruby with a little more curiosity. "I'm not lying, because my predictions are always accurate." Ruby paused, her fingers drawing circles in the air. Suddenly, she pointed her finger at the gate. "Soon, there will be monsters attacking here." As soon as Ruby finished speaking, a huge noise came, and the bell at the gate rang 3 times. This was the sign of a monster invasion. Everyone was shocked and ran towards the playground. The person in charge of keeping watch rushed up to us in a hurry. Lord Stephen, there are monsters. See, I told you it was true. Ruby spread her arms proudly, unable to hide her arrogance. She's really cute, I thought to myself sincerely, out of the corner of my eye. I glanced at the others. Their eyes were shining brightly, as if they had fallen into a galaxy, but this isn't the time to be infatuated. I reminded the others in my heart and turned my attention to the gate. It was a humanoid monster. It covered its eyes and let out a strange cry. Its internal organs were clearly visible in its stomach. It looked like an ordinary zombie. Ruby hooked her lips and showed a bright smile. Of course, she knew better than anyone that this wasn't an ordinary monster. 7. In just an instant, Stephen and the others took out their weapons. Stephen, Thomas, and Samuel were the strongest combat forces and the core of the safe zone. Thomas put a seed in his palm and threw it into the distance. The seed quickly grew roots and firmly grasped the monster's head. The seed quickly grew many vines that bound the monster, and the monster fell to the ground helplessly, allowing the seed to absorb its nutrients. Is that all? The superpower holder on guard let out a long sigh and was about to step forward to give the monster a fatal blow. Wait, don't go over there, Ruby shouted. But it was already too late. The superpower holder turned around in surprise, and then he saw that the body that had originally fallen on the ground suddenly had its chest torn open, and a bug emerged from it and quickly pounced on the superpower holder's face. The bug firmly dug its feet into the superpower holder's flesh, and its mouthparts gnawed at the superpower holder's head. The superpower holder wailed in pain and tried hard to pull the bug off. Help me, save me. The superpower holder begged and stretched out his hand towards us. I hurriedly wanted to step forward to help, but I was blocked by someone. Ruby grabbed my hand, and there was a hint of threat in her eyes. He's already beyond saving. If you go over there, it will only make things more complicated. Ruby's tone was a bit cold, as if the person who was about to die in front of her wasn't alive at all. I was a bit dissatisfied with her attitude towards life, which was so casual. The superpower holder let out a painful scream, and my heart was also affected. How pitiful he was. What a pitiful human being. His fingers dug into the soil, and his eyes were bleeding continuously. With a pleading look, his eyes stared at me firmly. Save me, Anna. I tried hard to break free from Ruby's hand, but it was all in vain. Ruby was much stronger than me, and I was firmly trapped in place by her. Samuel, Stephen, Thomas, go and save him. Why? Why are you just standing there and watching? The three of them stood there blankly, and their eyes were incredibly cold. 8. Only Samuel glanced at me, and there was a hint of apology in his eyes. Anna, we can't save him anymore. As soon as Samuel finished speaking, the superpower holder's head exploded like a firework, and the crooked bud got into the hole in his head. The superpower holder's eyes dimmed, and he stood up like a marionette. I stared at everything in front of me in a daze. Unable to say a word for a moment, the cat somehow came to my feet and made a strange sound that only I could understand. Human beings are really cold-blooded animals, the cat said so. I lowered my head and knelt on the ground weakly, and my hair covered my expression. Your saintliness will only harm all of us. Ruby shook off my hand and strode towards Samuel. Saintliness, this was the first time someone had called me that. The cat licked my hand gently, and its emerald green eyes stared at me in confusion. I subtly hooked the corner of my mouth into a smile and scratched my fingertip with my nail. A small drop of blood glistened like a ruby. In an instant, the bug seemed to sense something and controlled the body to look towards me. Its golden pupils were like magic in the dark night, and the bug stared at my golden pupils for a long time. I instinctively hugged the cat, as if to protect it, and held it in my arms. On the other side, Ruby approached the three of them and explained to them, this monster is a parasitic type. If we can't attack its host body, we won't be able to kill it. How do you know that? Samuel looked at Ruby with hostility, still harboring doubts about her. Sure enough, judging from the current plot, Samuel was actually the most troublesome character, Ruby thought to herself, yet she couldn't help but glance at Samuel. Samuel was her favorite character and also the main male lead. She knew everything about this world because this world was a pornographic, PO, novel, and she, Ruby, was a genuine transmigrator into the book. The Samuel Thomas Stephen in front of her was the male lead of this PO novel. 9. This world was a post-apocalyptic PO novel. In Ruby's previous world, it was a very popular novel. Not only was it adapted into a Yandere game of the same name, but it also had an animated adaptation. The female lead, Anna, and the three male leads were all the original research superpowered individuals who escaped from the laboratory when the apocalypse came. Anna had a kind heart and loved everyone equally like a saintess. She saved Samuel and the others who were also battered and bruised. During the process of getting along, Anna's kindness influenced everyone and made the male leads fall in love with her. However, her excessive kindness caused the male leads to suffer a great deal. In the end, Anna and the male lead saved the world and lived happily ever after. In Ruby's opinion, Anna was a stupid Mary Sue, a character overly kind and perfect. She was paranoid and had an obsession with the weak or pitiful. She would take them in and care for them regardless of everything. But in the apocalypse, being a Mary Sue was a sin. If she wasn't the female lead, she probably wouldn't have been able to survive in the apocalypse at all. Ruby had a car accident in her previous world and, upon waking up, transmigrated into this world. In this novel, Ruby abandoned her injured companions. Later, she was saved by Anna, because she concealed her superpower, and the companions she abandoned were also saved by Anna. The main character group saw through her true nature, and she was ultimately killed by a monster. But in Ruby's view, in the apocalypse, one should be as calm and rational as herself. It was simply incredible that someone as emotional as Anna had managed to survive until now. Since she had transmigrated into the book, this world had become a reality, and she wanted to prove that in the apocalypse, Mary Sues were doomed to die. The ones who would survive until the end would definitely be rational people like herself, according to the plot. At this moment, only Samuel had truly fallen in love with Anna, while the others had only a bit of affection for her to varying degrees. So, as long as she could make them fully believe in herself, Anna would be unable to do anything, because Anna was just a daughter flower, a person relying on men. After all, 10, because I can foresee the future. Ruby smiled and playfully winked at Samuel. Samuel furrowed his brow but didn't say anything more. We need to lure the host body out first. Stephen, we need your superpower. Ruby bent down and whispered something in front of the three of them. Moments later, Stephen showed an expression of admiration. Stephen had always liked rational and intelligent people, Ruby thought to herself. Samuel cast a sullen glance at Ruby. Although he was extremely unhappy with this woman in front of him, her plan was indeed a good one. If you want to doubt me, do it after the battle is over. For now, we must unite as one. Ruby extended her fist and gently tapped Samuel's chest. In the night, Samuel's gaze seemed to change. I stood not far away, observing the scene calmly and hiding my injured finger behind my back. The worm finally began to move, and the zombie quickly approached Ruby and the others with its limbs in an awkward position. Stephen drew out a sword from his bosom and stabbed at the zombie. The worm coiled in the zombie's brain suddenly emerged from the corpse and pounced towards Stephen's hand. Unfortunately, it missed. That was Stephen's superpower, creating an illusion. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Thomas threw out a seed. The vine that grew rapidly from the seed bound the worm tightly, making it unable to move. At Ruby's signal, Samuel slit his palm, and the blood flowed along the vine towards the worm. Finally, it turned into black flames that burned the worm to ashes. The worm gradually turned into charred dust and dissipated with the wind. The corpse also fell to the ground with a thud, like a puppet with its strings cut. How pitiful! I came to the corpse. When no one was paying attention, I wiped the drop of blood from my finger onto his wound. Picking up the cat at my feet, I left without looking back. No one noticed that the corpse's finger twitched slightly. 11. After this battle, Ruby quickly became one of the core combat forces in the safe zone. She could not only foresee the future but also had excellent physical fitness. She was sunny and intelligent, and everyone quickly grew to like her. Even Samuel, who had been very wary of her at first, gradually began to trust her, but she seemed to dislike me very much and regarded me as a thorn in her side. She suggested to the others that I be refused permission to go outside and that I stay honestly in the safe zone to take care of the old, weak, sick, and disabled people I had brought back myself. Ruby's superpower made her thrive. She could always bring back some very important things, but being prohibited from going outside was really boring. I really wanted to go out and find other people. I let out a long sigh. The one-eyed little girl squatting beside me nestled into my arms, just like a fluffy little dog. The one-eyed little girl. No, he was actually a little boy. His name was Simon. Due to constantly fleeing from place to place, his hair hadn't been taken care of for a long time. Moreover, with his slender figure and delicate appearance, he was often mistaken for a girl. Simon seemed to sense my distress. He tugged at the hem of my clothes and stuffed the candy in his arms into my hand. Sister Anna, have some candy. The candy was stolen by Simon when he sneaked around the storage room at night. Simon had secretly hidden the candy just to give it to me. I put the candy given by Simon into my mouth, and the sweet and sour taste stimulated my taste buds. Thank you, Simon. I stroked his head, and Simon nodded, burying his head in my arms, as I gently stroked the back of Simon's neck. I always felt that there was something missing around his neck. I really wanted to put a collar on him. I really wanted to dress him up again. I looked at Simon lovingly, and my fingers became even gentler. 12. So annoying. I didn't know when the cat appeared beside me. It made a strange whining sound. I squinted my eyes and hummed a song. The cat licked its fur and jumped into the darkness, melting into the shadows like water. Simon rested his head on my knees and gradually fell asleep to the sound of my singing. I took out a small knife from my pocket and gently cut my finger. I smeared a drop of blood into Simon's empty right eye socket. How pitiful. I'll make you happy soon. When Simon woke up again, he was lying beside his mother. His mother had lost both of her legs to save him when they were attacked by a monster. Unfortunately, he still lost one of his eyes because of that, but at least he managed to keep his life. Thanks to me, otherwise, he and his mother would never have been able to survive in the apocalypse. It was Lady Anna who carried you back. Lady Anna is so kind, his mother said as she replaced the clean gauze on Simon's right eye. Suddenly, a strange feeling welled up in his heart. His mother carefully removed the gauze from his eye. Suddenly, she let out an exclamation. As the gauze was untied, the dazzling sunlight shone in. Simon blankly covered his right eye, which hadn't seen the sunlight for a long time, couldn't help but close tightly at this moment. His right eye had grown back. How is this possible? Simon murmured in disbelief. He looked at his mother, and his mother covered her mouth in surprise, her eyes filled with disbelief. Simon slowly opened his right eye, and he suddenly realized something. He seemed to be able to see other things as well. 13. I want to go out and get some things. My voice interrupted the conversation among Ruby, Samuel, and the other two. They turned their gazes towards me. My presence seemed particularly out of place, and their gazes carried strange emotions. Isn't there the supplies you need in the warehouse? Thomas replied to me patiently, but I could see impatience in his eyes. He had never looked at me like that before. I tilted my head in confusion but only received a sneer from Ruby. No, I want to find them myself. I can go alone. Samuel stepped forward and grabbed my shoulder. Those black pupils seemed very strange to me at this moment. It's very dangerous for you to go out alone. Tell me what you need, and I'll go get it for you. Samuel, don't you trust me? I looked at him calmly, feeling a bit bored. Samuel felt a bit guilty under my gaze and was momentarily flustered. It's okay, let her go. I'll go with her. Ruby patted Samuel's shoulder and smiled confidently. Ruby accompanied me out of the safe zone. She silently followed behind me. I hummed a song cheerfully. The fresh air outside made me feel happy. On the bloody and messy street, I, in a white dress, seemed so out of place. Don't you think you're being too naive? I turned my head and met Ruby's beautiful eyes. What are you talking about? I tilted my head, trying to figure out what Ruby was trying to say. Are you really stupid or just pretending to be stupid? Ruby leaned forward, and her somewhat rough fingers pinched my neck. I looked at her with a smile and said nothing. This is the apocalypse. Can you stop being so naive? You brought back those old, weak, sick, and disabled people who are of no use to us. Besides increasing the food pressure, they bring no benefits at all. Ruby's anger seemed to have been pent up for a long time, and her hand pinching my neck unconsciously exerted more force. Do we have to consider benefits for everything we do? How do you evaluate whether a person is valuable or not? I said calmly, with no change in my expression. Ruby's face darkened, and for a moment, she didn't know how to answer. 14. They are all burdens. They can't help with anything. In the apocalypse, it's enough to just take care of ourselves and live well. But even without their help, our supplies like food are enough to support them. The hand pinching my neck trembled slightly. And even Ruby herself was a bit confused. But, if you keep saving people like this, the food will eventually run out. I tugged at my disheveled collar and met Ruby's gaze. Then tell me what I should do. What is the right thing to do? What is justice? I quickly walked up to Ruby, raised my head, and looked at her with burning eyes. We have no obligation to save them. As long as we can live well and be happy, that's enough. Is that so? That's your opinion? I closed my eyes and felt the wind blowing across my face. Suddenly, I burst into laughter. I covered my stomach and laughed uncontrollably. So naive, so stupid. Who is the naive one after all? Remember what you said today. Don't regret it. It seemed that Ruby had never seen me so crazy before. She was so scared that she took a few steps back and was momentarily stunned. I stopped laughing and regained my usual gentleness. I took a few steps forward and grabbed Ruby's somewhat cold hand. Let's go. The hand I held trembled slightly, and a trace of fear in Ruby's eyes fell into my heart. As expected, humans are cuter like this. I successfully brought back the things I wanted. Unlike my joy, Ruby seemed to be full of doubts. Samuel had been waiting at the door early. The moment he saw Ruby, his eyes lit up. You're back. Didn't you encounter any danger on the way? Ruby shook her head, looking a bit unwell. Are you okay? What happened? Samuel's expression changed, and he gently grabbed Ruby's shoulders and looked her up and down. I, who was ignored, tilted my head and walked past them sideways. As I passed by Ruby, I whispered, so pitiful. Ruby suddenly raised her head and stared fixedly at my retreating back. I turned back and smiled sweetly at her, with the pity in my eyes that couldn't be hidden. 15. Simon stood quietly in the corner of the corridor. He gently lifted the bandage on his right eye and suddenly opened his right eye with a different color. Sure enough, I can see. He looked at Thomas's figure in the field calmly. In his right eye, Thomas was a strange tree. All kinds of vines were twisted and coiled around the tree. The tree was full of fruits, and those fruits were rotten. Worm eggs could be vaguely seen inside the fruits. The tree was very huge, and its roots densely covered the nearby land, as if it were absorbing the nutrients from all around. So disgusting, Simon retched. Since his right eye grew back for some unknown reason. He could always see some strange things. What puzzled him was that ordinary people looked normal in his eyes, but whenever he used this eye to look at the superpowered individuals, in his eyes, they were all kinds of monsters. What exactly was he seeing with this eye? Simon didn't understand. Simon, there you are. A familiar voice came from beside him. In a hurry, Simon's bandage fell to the ground. He couldn't let others see his right eye, or he would be treated as a monster. Simon quickly covered his eye with his right hand and squatted down to pick up the bandage. Simon, what's wrong? I bent down and got close to Simon's face. Simon looked a bit flustered, but he calmed down the moment he saw me. Sister Anna. Simon stared at me, seemingly hesitant. I picked up the bandage for Simon and wanted to help him tie it back on. Sister Anna, I have something to tell you. Simon seemed to have made up his mind. He slowly lowered his right hand and showed me his strangely colored right eye. Yesterday, my right eye suddenly grew back. 16, Simon said as he opened his right eye and turned his gaze towards me. Simon was stunned for a moment, as if he had seen something incredible. He opened his mouth wide and stared at me for a long time. I stroked Simon's cheek, not caring about his abnormality at all. Simon, you've awakened your superpower. I carefully wrapped the bandage around his eye and explained to him, there are occasionally such superpowered individuals who awaken suddenly, so that's why your right eye grew back. Simon nodded blankly and looked at my face thoughtfully. Simon, I called his name softly and hugged him. Don't be afraid. I'll always protect you. Simon buried his head in my arms, and my fingers caressed the back of his neck. I tied a black collar around his neck. This is a gift for you. And there are clean clothes. Let's go and change. Simon nodded and grabbed my hand. Simon put on clean clothes, and I also simply tidied up his messy hair for him. After careful dressing, Simon looked much prettier, and finally, it could be seen at a glance that he was a boy. After dressing him up, I planned to distribute the remaining clothes to the other injured people. The sun was very bright today. I waved my hand to block some of the sunlight. From the shadow I blocked, the cat jumped out. The cat had a finger in its mouth and swallowed it in an instant. I bent down and stroked the cat's head. The tentacles protruding from its fur hooked my fingertips. 17. After Anna left, Simon recalled what he had just seen for a long time. In his right eye, Anna hadn't changed. Although she wasn't a monster, he clearly saw that there were all kinds of monster shadows behind Anna, almost filling the entire corridor. And the strangest thing was that a strange white light was emanating around Anna, making her look extremely holy. Whenever Anna moved, the monster shadows behind her would swing strangely following her movements. The only thing that could be confirmed was that Anna was as holy as a god in his eyes. What exactly was this? Was Anna a god? But if she was a god, why were there so many monsters following behind her? No matter what, Simon wouldn't doubt Anna. Anna was their savior and was a god in his eyes. Even if Anna was an evil god, it was the same. He was willing to follow her forever. Thinking of this, Simon took off the bandage on his right eye. He opened his right eye and happened to catch a glimpse of himself in the mirror. Simon was so scared that he sat down on the ground with a thud. He stared at the mirror with his right eye. In the mirror, his body was covered with eyes everywhere. On his arms, hands, face, there were densely packed eyes of different sizes all over. As the pupil of his right eye moved, the eyes on his body also moved accordingly. Simon scratched at the eyes on his body in a panic but didn't feel anything. Was it an illusion? But the self in front of him was so real, such a real monster. With a crack, Simon smashed the mirror with force. The fragments on the ground reflected his expression at this moment. It was joy. It was an uncontrollable joy. 18. The safe zone had been very unstable recently. All the chickens raised at the back had died. The plants in the fields had all been dug out, and the vegetables seemed to have been gnawed on by something. Some of the grain in the granary had also been stolen. No one had seen what had done these things, which made everyone even more terrified. Ruby was at her wit's end. All of this was different from what had happened in the novel. There were no such events described in the novel. It seemed that ever since going out with Anna last time, everything had become a mess. Anna herself seemed different from the one in the novel, and everything that had happened was completely the opposite. She had lied about being able to foresee the future, but at this moment, she couldn't say anything. It was as if only now did she start to realize that what she was experiencing was not a novel but reality. The safe zone was soon facing a food crisis. If she could really foresee the future, all of this could have been avoided long ago. Stephen and the others also had their doubts about this. Ruby had no choice but to fob them off with reasons like not being in a good state. The most urgent thing was to find the culprit quickly so as not to let all the previous efforts go to waste. Food supply had now become a huge problem. On average, each person could only get a small amount of food. Ruby believed that this matter must have been caused by someone on the inside. At least in the novel, the monsters didn't have self-awareness, they were only hostile towards humans, so it was impossible for the monsters to have done these things, and even more impossible for them to sneak into the safe zone without anyone noticing. Starting from this aspect, Ruby thought that it was an insider who had done it. So, who is the most likely to have stolen the food? Without a doubt, it was that group of ordinary people who were old, weak, sick, or disabled. Because they couldn't work, they always got the least amount of food. It was very likely that someone among them, out of jealousy, had carried out this series of actions. Ruby told Stephen her thoughts because she knew that Stephen also disliked that group of people very much. After all, they couldn't do anything but still took up resources. Stephen agreed with her thoughts, and the two hit it off and directly started the investigation. 19. Ruby led a large group of people with superpowers to the infirmary, ostensibly to check the bodies of the injured. Ruby also carefully observed among them to see if there were any people with strange behavior. In the corner, Simon silently watched everything in front of him. Ruby noticed him. She knew this little boy in the novel. He was the little boy picked up by Anna. He liked Anna very much, so he would go to the granary to steal candy for Anna. If that was the case, Ruby walked towards Simon with a sweet smile on her face. Little brother, would you like to go and have a physical examination with sister? Simon frowned slightly. He didn't like this woman. Simon turned around and tried to run away. Sensing Simon's resistance, Ruby called two people with superpowers and they forcibly held Simon. Simon struggled hard, but in the end, he couldn't resist the strength of the adults. Miss Ruby, Simon is just a child, he'll be scared like this. Simon's mother, who had a broken leg, propped herself up with her arm and looked at Ruby pleadingly, hoping that they would let Simon go. I'm not Anna. I have no obligation to be nice to you, Ruby said with a cold snort. Yes, she wasn't Anna. How could she compare with Anna? Simon felt a surge of anger in his heart and actually broke free from the restraint. He ran in front of his mother, trying to protect her, unexpectedly. During the struggle, the bandage was torn off and fell to the ground, and that strange colored red eye was suddenly revealed in front of everyone. Everyone was shocked, and then a wave of malice came. Didn't he have his right eye gouged out? What a strange color. He's like a monster. He must be a monster. Otherwise, how could an eye grow out of nowhere? The remarks from the people with superpowers poured into his ears, and their gazes towards him became fierce. Simon didn't understand. Clearly, in his right eye, they were the strange-looking monsters. A twisted black creature approached him. The black creature stretched out its dark hand and grabbed his shoulder. Simon closed his right eye, and this time, he clearly saw that the person in front of him was Ruby. You've awakened your superpower. Why didn't you report it? The fear, just from looking at Ruby with his right eye once, couldn't be dispelled. I'm not a monster. You're the monsters. I want to find Lady Anna. Simon hugged his head in pain and then hugged his legs helplessly. 20. He looked around at the expressions of the people around him. There was deep fear and disgust on their faces. At the same time, Simon saw his own reflection in the glass in the distance, a monster covered in eyes, with a strange smile on its lips. Simon's hand unconsciously touched his cheek and he felt the corners of his mouth raised. Why am I smiling? Catch him, Ruby said calmly. The people with superpowers who had been standing there in a daze finally reacted and caught the lifeless Simon. The people with superpowers tied Simon up, ignoring the heart-wrenching cries of the woman with the broken leg. They took Simon away. They took Simon to the conference room. Ruby ordered a search of Simon's body. Sure enough, they found a lot of candy on him. It was stolen from the granary. It was just that Ruby hadn't expected that this little boy was actually a person with superpowers too. Clearly, there wasn't much description of him in the novel. You stole the food from the granary, right? Samuel's face darkened and he placed his palm in front of Simon. In his palm were those candies. Simon was silent and didn't say anything. He just stared at the monsters in front of him. Because you've awakened your superpower, you were able to do those things. Stephen pushed his glasses frame. The reflection in the glasses showed Simon's pale face. Stephen sneered at Simon. He had always been dissatisfied with these idle people who took up resources. Now he finally had a reason to make things difficult for them. Don't you want to explain anything? Thomas said slowly, playing with a seed in his hand. Will you believe me if I say something? Simon's heterochromatic eyes looked at the four people in front of him calmly. The strange white pupils reflected their faces, making them all feel a bit scared involuntarily. Lock him up and deal with him after the crisis is over. At Stephen's order, Simon was taken away. This time, Simon didn't struggle. He let them handle him feebly. 21. What have you done to Simon? Learning the news that Simon had been put in confinement, I rushed into the conference room. I walked up to Ruby aggressively and grabbed her collar. Thomas stood in front of me and shook my hand away. Those green eyes looked especially strange to me at this moment. Anna, don't be unreasonable. Unreasonable. I smiled self-deprecatingly and then pointed at Thomas. Simon couldn't have done these things on his own, just based on these pieces of evidence. You locked up an innocent child who's being unreasonable. Thomas frowned and his gaze towards me became even colder. Anna, stop covering for him. Stop being so overly kind-hearted. Ruby walked up to me. Do you know how much Samuel and the others have suffered because of your kindness in the past? Because you saved people everywhere. They had to bear more responsibility and be busier, cleaning up your mess. You haven't done anything. You rely on Samuel and the others for everything. You can't do anything without men. My hands and feet turned cold, but at the same time, a hint of pleasure welled up in my heart. No, it's not the time yet. Everyone cast cold gazes at me, making me tremble with excitement. This was the feeling of being spurned by everyone. However, just thinking about being betrayed by the pet I had raised all the way made me feel a bit sad. With tear-filled eyes, I looked at everyone weakly and helplessly. Do you prefer to believe Ruby rather than me? I cried movingly, and my clothes were wet with tears. Would anyone be swayed by this? Would anyone change their minds? Samuel showed a hint of hesitation, but after catching a glimpse of Ruby's profile, he suppressed that hesitation. So, he already has a new master. I wiped away my tears and turned around silently, ready to leave. With the apocalypse upon us, those who are overly kind-hearted will surely die. Ruby's voice came from behind me, but there was no more sadness on my face. I've had enough of this child's play. There's also a new pet. It's almost time to end all of this. Thinking this way, I took out a small knife. 22. After the confrontation with Anna, Ruby suddenly felt a dizzy spell. Thomas beside her gently put his arm around her. Ruby, haven't you been resting well? You've been working too hard these days, haven't you? Ruby's head was dizzy, and she seemed on the verge of falling at any moment. You go and rest. Leave the rest to us to deal with. Stephen gently stroked Ruby's head, his eyes full of affection. Originally, they should have been by Anna's side, just because of their love for Anna. They chose to change themselves, somehow feeling a bit uneasy. Ruby hugged herself and nodded. She had taken everything away from Anna. Remembering Anna's somewhat lonely gaze, she felt a trace of guilt for some reason. No, she was right, but she was doing this for Anna's own good. It was to make Anna awaken independently and to make Anna stop being so overly kind-hearted. Yes, she was doing this for Anna's own good. Samuel picked up Ruby's body and gently placed her on the bed. His gentle big hand caressed Ruby's forehead. Go to sleep peacefully, Ruby. Feeling the warmth on her head, Ruby fell asleep. In her dream, she felt that something was staring at her in the dark. Her body couldn't move, and that gaze became heavier and heavier. Something was crawling up. Something cold and smooth crawled up her arm. That thing seemed to have many legs, rustling as it touched her body. Ruby opened her eyes with effort. In a half-awake and half-dream state, she saw a figure. It was the figure of a man. There was a large hole in the man's head, and many centipedes crawled out of it. His body was made up of centipedes. Thousands or even tens of thousands of centipedes formed his body, and only his head was in the shape of a human. The centipedes that fell from his body rustled as they climbed onto her body. Ruby couldn't move. She let out a cry and sat up in bed. It turned out to be a dream. Ruby wiped the cold sweat from her forehead. Still feeling lingering fear in her heart, Ruby got up and opened the curtain. Only then did she realize that she had slept through the whole night. 23. Miss Ruby, something terrible has happened. A panicked person with superpowers pushed open Ruby's door. People are dead. Many people are dead. Following the person with superpowers to the infirmary, what greeted her eyes were the mutilated corpses all over the ground. Many people had been disemboweled, and there were traces of being gnawed on their internal organs. Their corpses were in a state of disrepair, with tiny marks of being bitten. Ruby tried hard to hold back the urge to vomit and stepped forward to examine those corpses. Even though she had seen all kinds of bloody scenes, she was still terrified by the sight in front of her. No one had been spared. The tragic state of the corpses revealed the pain they had suffered before their deaths. Ruby walked up to the corpse of a woman with a broken leg. Ruby recognized her. The corpse of the woman with a broken leg was Simon's mother. At this moment, there were pockmarked bite marks on her body, as if she had been bitten to death by something. In a trance, Ruby seemed to hear the sound of something chewing. Plop, something sticky dripped from the ceiling and landed on her face. Plop, a centipede landed in Ruby's hand. The corner of the centipede's mouth was still stained with bright red blood. Ruby raised her head shakily and saw that the ceiling was covered with dense centipedes. The centipedes formed a human shape and were gnawing on a severed hand. The centipedes hung from the ceiling, and the head with a hole stared straight at Ruby. She remembered that head. It was the head of the person with superpowers who had been bitten to death by a parasite. 24. Simon woke up from the boundless darkness. What greeted his eyes was a warm and familiar home. His mother had prepared dinner as usual, his father had come home early for a rare change, and the family was having dinner happily. On the dining table, there was a vase. In the middle of the vase, there was a small daisy. "Simon, what are you thinking about?" His mother's words brought him back to reality. Simon smiled and nodded, then picked up the fork obediently. His mother stood beside him gently and served him tonight's dinner. Simon picked up the fork and looked at the plate. On the plate was an eyeball. The fork fell from his hand, and Simon's body couldn't stop trembling. Simon then noticed that there was an eyeball on his father's and mother's plates too. "Simon, eat quickly." His mother and father stared at him strangely. The 4 eyeballs plopped onto the table, and all the eyeballs suddenly turned towards Simon. "Don't look anymore. Stop looking." As if thinking of something, Simon picked up the fork on the ground and stabbed it towards his right eye. If he gouged out his right eye, he wouldn't have to see it. The hand stabbing towards his right eye was stopped. Simon turned his head in confusion and met a pair of golden eyes. "Simon," I called his name softly and pulled him out of the illusion. The moment he heard the voice, Simon felt extremely relaxed. The surrounding scene gradually turned into a gray basement, and all the illusions he had seen disappeared. "Lady Anna," Simon seemed to see a white light, holy and dazzling. That light gently wrapped him up, and gradually, all the pain disappeared. "Simon, it's okay, I've come to save you." I gently pulled Simon up and wiped away his tears. Simon felt extremely happy. Happiness surrounded his heart, and he felt love. Yes, it was love. Simon smiled happily, and hundreds of pairs of eyes on his body smiled along with him. So happy, sure enough. "It's because I love Lady Anna," Simon thought silently in his heart. 25. Ruby couldn't make a sound. She forcefully shook off the centipede in her hand and stood up instinctively. More and more centipedes fell from the ceiling. Without time for further thought, Ruby directed the people with superpowers to kill the centipedes. The centipedes kept falling, densely covering the floor. Every time Ruby killed a wave of centipedes, more centipedes would fall. They kept coming, and there was no way to kill them all. "Ruby, what's going on?" Samuel and the other 2 who arrived in a hurry were shocked by the scene in front of them. It was clearly a classroom filled with a sea of centipedes. "Samuel, try to burn them all to death." Samuel nodded, slit his palm, and let his blood cover the centipedes. Black flames rose up, and a large number of centipedes were burned to death. But to everyone's surprise, new centipedes crawled out of the corpses of the dead centipedes. Every time some were burned to death, more would be born. "How could this be?" Ruby exclaimed. The head hanging upside down from the ceiling showed a faint smile. When he opened his mouth, more centipedes fell out. "Why, didn't you save me?" The head let out a hoarse voice, making the swarm of centipedes even more restless. "Is it him?" Samuel frowned when he recognized the head. A strong sense of fear washed over his heart. Why, how could he have become a monster? Shouldn't he be dead? Just as Ruby was thinking, a centipede had already crawled to her feet. "Ruby, don't be distracted." Samuel pulled Ruby out of the classroom and then closed the door tightly. "Lock all the windows." Following Samuel's instructions, everyone locked the doors and windows, barely managing to stop the centipede swarm from attacking further. "This can only hold them off for a while. Let's go somewhere else and think of a countermeasure." Stephen adjusted his glasses, even in such a situation. He remained calm. Ruby led the remaining people to the hall to discuss a countermeasure. Among the remaining people, there were 8 people with superpowers and 5 ordinary people. Where had the others gone? Just as she was wondering, a strange sound caught her attention. 26. Meow. A black kitten sat alone at the gate. It was Anna's cat. The kitten sat quietly on the body of an injured person. Ruby noticed that it was a person with superpowers she knew. The person with superpowers was gasping for breath, seemingly having suffered a very serious injury. In an instant, everyone's nerves tensed up. "Don't be nervous, I'm not your match." The kitten licked its fur, and a voice came from behind it. The kitten melted and turned into a puddle of black water. From the black water, a figure emerged. The person was covered in tentacles. Tentacles protruded from his eye sockets, mouth, and from his black curly hair like seaweed. The ends of the tentacles kept dripping black liquid, which gathered on the ground to form his shadow. The person laughed softly, retracted the tentacles in his eyes back into his body, and revealed his playful red eyes. The tentacles beneath him suddenly stabbed into the chest of the person underneath, and pulled out a beating heart. The tentacles brought the heart in front of him, and he swallowed it in one bite. Ruby couldn't believe what she was seeing. For the first time, she heard that there were monsters in this world with self-awareness. "Have fun on your own." After the black tentacles finished speaking, the whole body melted into the ground and disappeared into the shadows. Ruby let out a sigh in her heart. Fortunately, they didn't choose to fight, because there were too many unknown factors, and she didn't have the confidence to win at all. She should have been relieved. until she saw the corpse that was supposed to be dead gradually turn into a monster and stand up, right in front of everyone. The corpse turned into a monster, the corpse gradually became transparent and finally turned into a jelly-like mass of water. Inside the water, various organs could be clearly seen, but there was no heart. This was undeniable proof that the monster in front of them was the person with superpowers who had just died. I remember him. That person's superpower was to turn into water, I remember, someone behind exclaimed. At the same time, a bold guess emerged in Ruby's mind. 27. The dead people with superpowers would turn into monsters. If this conjecture was really true, it meant that the people with superpowers were the culprits who destroyed the world. Ruby's conjecture made her shudder, and at the same time, a sense of powerlessness completely enveloped her. The novel didn't mention such things at all. She had no idea about these things. Thinking carefully, the descriptions of the worldview in the novel were basically just mentioned in passing. She just didn't expect that the truth would be like this. The people with superpowers were monsters. There was no time to think more. Now, what needed to be solved was the crisis in front of them. Ruby bit her lower lip and began to think about the important information in the novel. If they wanted to solve the problem, they had to start from the source. It was the laboratory. In the novel, Anna and the three male protagonists found the antidote in the laboratory, which saved the apocalypse. Go to the laboratory. There is a way to save the world in the laboratory, Ruby shouted, trying to calm everyone down. We must abandon the safe zone. Anyway, it's not the time to stay here now. Looking at the water blocking the way in front and the centipede swarm that was about to break through the door behind, they could only choose to escape. We trust you, Ruby. Thomas smiled slightly and stood in front of her. I'll distract the water monster, and you take the opportunity to escape. After Thomas finished speaking, he placed his hand on the ground, and vines grew out of the soil and quickly bound the monster. During this time, everyone quickly fled. Thomas stayed behind to cover them. He clapped the dust off his hands and tried to take this opportunity to escape, but a force grabbed his leg. He looked down and saw that tentacles extending from his shadow had firmly trapped him in place. There were bursts of soft laughter coming from the shadow. For the first time, Thomas felt an overwhelming sense of fear. Thomas, Ruby called his name. She wanted to turn back and save him, but was blocked by Steven. He's already hopeless. If you go back, it will only make things more complicated. But, 28, before they knew it, the centipede swarm had broken through the classroom, and a dark mass of centipedes appeared beside Thomas. The head on the centipede swarm let out a laughter, and the centipedes climbed up the vines and untied the restraint on the water monster. Save me, save me. The centipedes climbed onto Thomas's body and nodded his head. Ruby, let's go quickly. Samuel couldn't bear to look and covered Ruby's eyes, gently pulling her hand. Ruby didn't dare to look back. She desperately covered her ears, trying to forget all of this. Ruby and the others fled in a hurry. Behind them, Thomas was gradually eaten up by the centipede swarm, leaving only a skeleton in the end. Roots grew from under the skeleton and pierced into the ground. In an instant, the skeleton turned into a towering tree. The shadow gradually formed into a human shape and watched the scene coldly. I held Simon's hand and slowly walked out of the school. The centipede swarm made way for me until I walked up to the shadow. Your Majesty the Queen. The shadow let out a deep voice and called me. I nodded. I took out a small knife from my arms and stabbed it into the tree trunk. The tree trunk withered rapidly and turned back into a skeleton. It's a monster. Simon stared at the skeleton with his hundreds of eyes. I pulled out the small knife and saw that the skeleton grew flesh again, and Thomas, who was intact, appeared in front of me. He looked at me in shock. He didn't understand how he had come back to life, nor did he understand why I was here. You're so pitiful, Thomas. I looked at him with pity, and my fingers gently stroked his face. But it's okay. It will be all right soon. I will save you. The shadow broke off 2 branches for me. I took the branches and forcefully inserted them into both sides of Thomas's head. The branches took root and wrapped around his brain. The nutrients absorbed from the brain made the branches bloom with bright and beautiful flowers. The roots covered his eyes, and finally took root firmly on his head. It looked like antlers. 29. Thomas raised his head, and everything in front of him was so strange. The complete campus was lively. The campus was full of greenery, and energetic students passed by him. He was wearing a school uniform, and there were several classmates beside him who cared about him. Classmate, are you okay? I saw you standing here just now, the female classmate beside him asked with concern, attracting the attention of the passing classmates to him. Yes, his name was Thomas, and he was a high school student. His club was the gardening club. He lived in a happy and safe era, and everyone in this world was gentle and considerate. There was no need to worry about the threat of death at all. But why did he think it was good not to have the threat of death? Thomas, are you still sleepy? Come on. Accompany me to the arcade. A male student patted Thomas's shoulder, dispersing Thomas's confused thoughts. Forget it. Don't think so much. Thomas thought like this and smiled, putting his arm around his friend's shoulder. I put away the small knife and smiled as I watched Thomas talking to himself. Thomas had a smile on his face and was talking to the empty space beside him. "Now, you must be very happy, right? Just keep living in the forest woven for you by the trees." The shadow gradually melted and turned into a puddle of black water. The black water enveloped me and Simon, and in an instant, we disappeared. In the empty playground, there was only the strange laughter of Thomas with antlers on his head. 30, under the leadership of Samuel and the others, Ruby and the others successfully reached the Research Institute. The Research Institute stood in a remote mountain forest, different from the desolation of the apocalypse. The Research Institute didn't seem to have suffered much damage. This was where everything began, and it would also be where everything ended. Thomas didn't make it here. He should have been here originally. Which step had gone wrong? Why did Thomas die there? Ruby frantically scratched her hair, and tears couldn't help but flow down. "This isn't the time to cry, Ruby. We can't let Thomas sacrifice in vain." Samuel patted Ruby's shoulder lightly and hugged her in his arms. Yes. There was still hope. Find the antidote. Thomas wasn't really dead yet. He would turn into a monster. Maybe finding the antidote could save Thomas's life. Ruby stabilized her mood and began to recall the content of the novel. The antidote. I remember. It seemed to be in the laboratory where Anna had been confined before. Samuel settled the injured people in the laboratory. Fortunately, the laboratory had sufficient reserves of food and medicine, and the defense was also very strong. But Samuel didn't like this place. This was also the reason why the safe zone hadn't chosen the Research Institute in the first place. He didn't want to come here. Samuel, Stephen, and the others were different from the people who awakened their superpowers under the apocalypse. Their superpowers were artificially stimulated through research. The purpose of the Research Institute was to study how to enable humans to use superpowers. They injected an unknown potion into Samuel's body and used all kinds of inhumane methods to stimulate Samuel's superpower: electric shock, acupuncture, burning, drowning, burying in the soil. They tried all kinds of methods that could be thought of. Samuel awakened his superpower when his skin was burned by fire, his blood turned black, and at the same time, he could transform it into flames. By the way, what about Anna? Since Ruby appeared, his feelings for Anna had been diluted a lot. Compared with the gentle and weak Anna, he did prefer the lively and confident Ruby, but whenever he thought of Anna, his heart would always ache faintly. Anyway, Anna was his savior and a ray of light in his life. He vaguely remembered that Anna had also escaped from the Research Institute. Strange, what was Anna's superpower? Wait a minute, how did Anna save him back then? A huge sense of unease filled his heart. How could a weak woman save him from a monster and retreat with the injured? A chill spread all over his body, and he suddenly remembered something. That was, don't say it, don't think about it, don't look. The Anna in his mind raised her index finger and placed it in front of her mouth. Samuel fell to his knees weakly. He couldn't say anything. 31. Ruby went to Anna's laboratory alone. Here, there was the antidote, based on her memory of the novel. Ruby found a secret room in the laboratory. It was called a secret room, but it was actually a cold storage room for storing hidden potions. There were a wide variety of the same kind of potion placed inside. This must be the antidote. The world could finally be saved. Ruby cried with joy and took out several vials of the potion from the shelf. Out of the corner of her eye, she accidentally caught a glimpse of a report. She bent down and picked up the report. She recognized the photo on the report at a glance. It was Anna, test subject 000. Anna, she has a gentle and obedient personality and actively cooperates with the experiment, but no matter what kind of research is carried out, she won't resist or have negative emotions. Through several years of research, we found that test subject 000 can, so the top management made a decision. We named this experiment the creation plan. Test subject 000 isn't. Please eliminate the creation plan as soon as possible. A large part of the report was burned black, and only these pieces of information could be vaguely seen. The mottled bloodstains on the report covered some of the words. Ruby crumpled the report into a ball and casually threw it aside. Anyway, the world was about to be saved, and she didn't care about this information at all. Ruby held the potions and returned to the room where Stephen was with some excitement, unlike her excitement. Everyone in the room looked dejected. 32. Just as she was about to ask, Samuel stood behind her without making a sound. Ruby. Samuel smiled gently, but there was no color on his face. Ruby turned around when she heard the sound, and warm blood splashed on her face. Samuel held a sharp piece of glass in his hand and stabbed it hard into his neck. I don't want to think anymore. I'm sorry, Ruby. Samuel's tears mixed with his blood, and he smiled bitterly. Samuel. Ruby's voice trembled, and the vials of potion in her hand almost slipped to the ground. Maybe death is the best ending for us. After Samuel finished speaking, black blood flowed all over his body. In an instant, flames ignited and wrapped around Samuel's body, as if determined to burn himself clean. The black flames burned fiercely. In Samuel's screams, his skin gradually dried up. Water, quickly put out the fire. It's useless. Samuel's fire can only be extinguished by himself. Water can't put it out. Stephen said coldly. Ruby was stunned. Samuel was burned to nothing in front of all of them, at least this way. He doesn't have to turn into a monster and be killed by us. Stephen pushed his glasses frame, and his tone was unprecedentedly calm. Do you have a heart? He was our comrade. Why can you watch him die so calmly? Ruby rushed in front of Stephen, tears streaming down her face. The person she liked the most had committed suicide in front of her. But didn't you tell me that under the apocalypse, we should prioritize ourselves? Stephen's glasses sparkled with a cold light. Ruby was stunned. She had indeed said these words to Stephen. No, it shouldn't be like this. Where did it go wrong? Wasn't this supposed to be an ordinary post-apocalyptic, novel world? Shouldn't she be able to enjoy the happiness of being loved by everyone with peace of mind? Why did it become like this? 33. Did you find the antidote? Stephen's gaze fell on the potions in Ruby's arms. Ruby nodded listlessly. Stephen took out a vial of the potion and handed it to an injured person with superpowers and an ordinary person. You, drink it. Stephen's tone carried an uncompromising majesty. The two of them looked at each other but didn't dare to take the potion. They all knew that the origin and effect of the potion were unknown, and someone had to test it first. As the core combat forces, Stephen and Ruby definitely couldn't drink the potion first. Even if the potion really worked, it meant that after drinking it, Stephen would become an ordinary person, so letting the others test the potion was the most correct choice. Choosing one person with superpowers and one ordinary person was because Stephen wanted to observe the effects of this potion on people with superpowers and ordinary people respectively. If you don't drink it, I'll throw you out, Stephen threatened. And his handsome face was filled with gloom. The two of them tremblingly took the potions and drank them under the gaze of Stephen and the others. Bind them up. At Stephen's order, the remaining people tied the two of them up tightly. Ruby still held out a glimmer of hope in her heart. If the antidote was real, at least she could still save Thomas. How do you feel now? Ruby asked with trepidation. I seem to be able to hear sounds from far away, the ordinary person who drank the potion said. And he didn't seem any different from before. There are so many people talking. It's so noisy. Stephen frowned deeply. In an instant, he understood. He's awakened his superpower. Almost at the same time, the person with superpowers who drank the potion suddenly let out a painful scream. His body began to change strangely. He rolled on the ground in pain, and his skin gradually peeled off as he moved. He was shedding his skin. As he kept rubbing, a layer of human skin gradually came off, revealing a new body covered with fleshy scales underneath. His body became smaller and he slipped out of the ropes on his own. At this moment, he could no longer be called a human. He took a bite of the ear of the person who was tied up, and in an instant, the laboratory was filled with blood. Stephen reacted quickly and cut off the monster's head with a knife. Fortunately, it wasn't a very powerful monster, and Stephen killed it with one move. This isn't the antidote, Ruby murmured to herself. Why was it completely different from the novel? Ruby suddenly thought of that report and turned around and ran towards Anna's laboratory. 34. Where was it? Where on earth was Anna's experimental report? Ruby opened the drawers in the laboratory, searching for Anna's experimental records. Anna was the initial test subject. She must have some secrets. Finally, at the bottom of the drawer, Ruby found a report. Research shows that the body fluids of test subject 000 can stimulate superpowers. Therefore, her body fluids were developed into a serum for new research. After injecting the serum into other test subjects, the test subjects showed obvious changes. The creation plan was launched. Using the characteristics of test subject 000, new people with superpowers were developed. The creation plan failed, and test subject 000 escaped from the shelter. She isn't human. The experimental report ended abruptly here. Ruby felt a bit suffocated. Anna wasn't human. And the potion wasn't the antidote either. Those potions were Anna's serum. She should have guessed it earlier. Anna clearly had the kindness to pity all living beings, but the look in her eyes sometimes was as if she was looking at ants. Anna, what on earth are you? Are you asking me? I walked out of the shadows. Ruby seemed to be startled by me and took a few steps back. There was an undeniable fear in Ruby's eyes. I smiled understandingly and kept a distance from her. In your perception, I'm something like an evil god, or in your words, I'm the queen bee. They obtained power from me. They have my blood in their bodies. I'm their queen and their mother. I smiled and moved a little closer to Ruby. Ruby's face showed an expression of disbelief, as if thinking of something. The color drained from her lovely face. The apocalypse. Was the apocalypse caused by you? Why did you do this? Do you hate humans so much? 35. I smiled without saying a word and casually picked up the syringe in the laboratory. The tip of the needle was rusty, and there were faint traces of blood on it. It was in this very laboratory that I was subjected to various experiments by greedy humans in the past. I don't hate them, because humans are so weak and pitiful. They were just pursuing power. I gave them what they desired when they pursued power. I was just fulfilling their wishes. On the contrary, I love humans very much. Just like how you humans love kittens and puppies, you are so weak and pitiful that I can't help but want to observe you. I don't have negative emotions. As the queen, all I possess is mercy and kindness. I like the negative emotions of humans, which are things I don't have. I like to see the weak humans struggling in despair. So I pretended to be human in order to observe them more closely. Ruby, didn't you tell me before not to be a saintly person and just do what makes myself happy? I walked up to Ruby and put on that gentle smile as always. Ruby's whole body began to tremble. She felt a deep-seated fear from within. She finally understood that I in front of her was fundamentally a different kind of being from her. Why is it like this? Isn't this world supposed to be just a world from a post-apocalyptic, P.O. novel? Why has it become like this? Ruby frantically threw everything on the ground, as if she could no longer bear it, and began to explode. How do you know that your so-called novel coincides with everything that has happened in this world? Isn't it just a coincidence? Ruby, this is reality. Ruby raised her head. At this moment, she had lost her former confidence. She was confused. She didn't know what exactly she should do to save all of this completely. No, she had been granted superpowers. Even if she died, she would turn into a monster. She didn't want to die yet. Ruby suddenly realized something. She raised her head and her eyes that looked at Anna lit up. You are the mother body. If I kill you, will all of this end? Ruby's words made me slightly stunned. Then, I suddenly had an idea in my mind. You guessed right. However, if you kill me, not only will the monsters die, but all of you with superpowers who have my serum in your bodies will also die. Ruby, let's play a game. 36. I took out the dagger from my bag and placed it in front of Ruby. I'm giving you a chance to kill me. This dagger can completely kill me, and I won't resist. You will become a hero, and the apocalypse will end, but at the same time, all of you with superpowers, including you, will die with me, and the remaining ordinary people will be saved, but you can also choose not to kill me. Then I'm willing to help you remove my serum from your body. And you can live on as an ordinary person in this apocalyptic world full of monsters. Come on, make your choice. Are you going to sacrifice your life to kill me for the sake of the remaining humans, become the savior of humanity, and turn into the saintly person you dislike the most? Or are you going to cling to life for your own sake, ignore me, and then become the most worthless existence in your own eyes? I tilted my head and smiled, waiting for Ruby's reply. I never break my promise. But I also always like to observe humans. I'm curious about what choice Ruby will make, no matter what decision she makes. Anna, truly feel excited from the bottom of my heart. Ruby's trembling hand grasped the small knife, and her eyes stared straight at me. With a puff, a knife pierced through Ruby's chest, and the small knife slipped from Ruby's fingertips. Ruby turned her head in disbelief, and Stephen's cold gaze stared at Ruby quietly. Ruby. It was you who taught me that one must always put oneself first. Stephen smiled gently, and the knife in his hand stirred inside Ruby's body. He pulled out the knife in one go and pushed Ruby to the ground. I put away my smile and stared at Stephen coldly. Ruby's body was casually thrown aside. Stephen picked up the small knife and strode up to me. Let me make the choice. I don't care about the others. I want to live. 37. I looked at Stephen in front of me, but I felt an overwhelming sense of unfamiliarity. Ruby never would have thought until her death that she would be betrayed by her most important companion. I hate betrayal. Stephen was originally the pet I chose at the beginning. He was originally human too. I nurtured him. He was neither a monster nor did he lack self-awareness, but a pet must be completely loyal to me. But they chose to betray me and follow a new master. Now, he has betrayed me again. You have violated my game rules. You are not the protagonist I chose. I stretched out my hand, and Simon walked out from the darkness. Please die. I tilted my head and smiled. I extracted my serum from his body. Now he was just an ordinary person at the mercy of others. Simon glared at him fiercely. The moment he met Simon's gaze, Stephen felt a huge amount of things rush into his brain. He lay on the ground in pain and dug at his own eyes with force. He saw a lot of strange things, some things that he shouldn't have seen. He directly dug out his eyeballs with his hands, but even though he couldn't see, he could still hear. He grabbed the syringe beside him in pain and stabbed it hard into his eardrum, but he could still feel that there were strange things around him. So many pairs of eyes, even just by feeling. Stephen could sense the creepy feeling of being stared at by hundreds of pairs of eyes. Your Majesty the Queen, the remaining people have all been dealt with. The shadow appeared behind me, and the black tentacles affectionately wrapped around my feet. I looked at Stephen's struggling figure in pain with satisfaction, feeling the negative emotions emanating from him. Soon, he would be tortured to the point of mental breakdown and die. So pitiful, but I couldn't help but laugh softly. Simon was attracted by my laughter and turned his gaze towards me. In his eyes, I became even more holy and divine, and the white light became even more dazzling. However, It seemed that the shadows of the monsters behind me had become a bit more numerous. 38. The apocalypse has lasted for nearly 100 years. The resilient humans have rebuilt their own strongholds. The monsters still run amok, and the people with superpowers have shouldered the mission of protecting humanity. They have established the alliance of people with superpowers. Classified and numbered the people with superpowers, and cooperated together. Humans have built their own bases, and finally, human civilization has been able to continue. Sebastian is a member of the Alliance of People with Superpowers, a B-level person with superpowers. Today was originally an ordinary mission outside, but he unexpectedly encountered the highest level monster. He was seriously injured and lost consciousness. When he woke up again, he met a pair of gentle eyes like flowing water. The woman in front of him had saved him and taken good care of him. The woman told him that she was a wanderer in the apocalypse and had been living a life of displacement. Sebastian was smitten. He stared intently at the woman in front of him, who was as beautiful as a fairy. He asked the woman what her name was and wanted to take her back with him. The woman tilted her head and showed an extremely gentle smile. "Nice to meet you. My name is Anna.